Good afternoon. My name is Donovan Romero. I'm presenting Let the Beat Control Your Body, the role of music on emotional effect. I want to start off by taking you on a little journey on how I arrived at this particular topic. I focused on, well first, I originally focused on what is music. And music is defined as any instrument or combination of sounds that create harmony, and it allows any expression of emotion. And that brought me to my next point. Well, what's expression of emotion? How do we express that? And in psychology, it's any verbal or nonverbal cues that allow an effective state or a communication that's going on internally. And it brought me to the fact that music's everywhere, so it has to play a really big role in how we live our daily lives. And music is played in all different facets, whether it's played in headphones or whether it's played out in a club or in public. It's everywhere. And that kind of brought me to my hypothesis on how can emotions change based upon music heard and the type of songs, and how does that manage to change, if at all. And some of the past research that I want to focus on, Levinson in 1990 said that feelings are made to us, they're backgroundless. They're very by themselves, but they're limited in duration. And he presents it as the wine tasting theory. I don't know how many of you have been wine tasting, but when you go wine tasting, they give you a small sample, right? And that's kind of what bases the rest of the flavor that's in that bottle. And predominantly, when we listen to music, it's in a very small, short of time. That 30 seconds that you're listening to that particular song affects whether you'll like the song ultimately or you won't like it. You'll know pretty much right away. And North and Hargreaves in 1986 found that people prefer music that has the same emotional connotation that's directly correlated to their situational area that they're in. So if you're at a club, you typically want to hear club music. If you're studying in a library, I don't think you want to hear rock music, or maybe that's your thing. But it's very situational to how music is listened to in particular areas. And there was research done in 2006 as well, as far as music therapy. They said that listening to music helps change the brain and the brain's functioning to the same extent as medication. And of course, this study was done over a couple of months, give or take 6 months, I believe. And they watched people progress medically through music and gave them their favorite choice of song and allowed them to listen to that song every day and allowed them the freedom of choice to pick songs. And they physiologically became better through that music listening. And the national anthem is actually another study that they did on the national anthem. They said that we are brought together through music, and that's why we have the national anthem. It brings people together, and I feel like that's why we listen to music. It ultimately brings people together on a much larger basis, because individually we can listen to many different things, but as a whole, I believe that there's a social cement, there's a proponent to this that allows us to become a group and to become a unit and really come together as one whole, and it's through music that we do that, and it allows us to release a social stress. So getting into my study, I sampled 39 college level students. Females were 74%, males were 26%, with a mean age of 20.41. So not quite ready to go to the club, but we're almost there. Class standings were pretty much, I'd say, level throughout the entire spectrum. You have freshmen at 20%, sophomores 26%, and juniors as well, with seniors coming in at 28%, so pretty level there. One thing that I wanted to point out was that headphones were the #1 modality in which music is listened to, with 93% of the participants reporting to owning a mobile device. And I included that because in today's technology, that allows a lot of people to listen to a lot of music at any given point in time. Some of the materials used were consent forms, debriefing forms, and 3 songs. Time, which is a classical song, had no lyrics. It was strictly an instrumental version of a song. And Sublime, I don't know if you people are familiar with Sublime. It's a fairly older track, rather. And no pun intended on the 80s, rather. Bruno Mars is a fairly recent track, and that's more of a poppy track, and that's the track that I was playing here for you guys as you walked in, to give you guys a feel of the level that that particular song is on. The tempo is a lot higher, the beats per minute is a lot faster. I did use classroom speakers for my particular study. I presented a survey with pen and pencil. Questions were primarily based upon a 1 through 5 Likert scale. For the majority of the questions, that was the case. There was a couple of questions that were mixed in with qualitative and quantitative responses as well. And this here is my actual demographic survey. So you have the 1 through 5 listings here. I did ask what their favorite type of music was, how often they listen to music in any given location. I did list 6 locations here, but I did give participants the choice to write other, just in case there were any other places that they prefer listening to music, maybe in the woods or something, I don't know. How often they listen to music is very important, and so whether or not they pick songs based upon their particular emotion, which is another important factor, I believe. This is the actual survey. For each song I had participants listen to every given song. Once the song was finished, I then ended the song and asked them to fill out this particular survey. The ones highlighted in red here are the ones that I focused on: liveliness, happiness, sadness, and lovingness. There is 16 different emotions here. I did ask participants to fill out as much as they possibly could as far as the emotion that they were feeling. The procedure. So I contacted students I contacted professors to go in, conduct a study, and upon approval of said study, I had consent forms ready. I handed those out to the participants. Participation was not mandatory, however, it was encouraged. Upon completion of these consent forms, I did give them the survey, and I handed them a debriefing form as well to debrief them as far as what my study was looking at exactly and what exactly was presented to them. The study took an entirety about 15 minutes from start to finish. And there was 2 groups of this particular study. There was Group A and Group B for the purposes of following my presentation today. Group A will be listening to classical, reggae, pop, and contemporary in that order, while Group B will be listening to the same set of songs, just in the reverse order. After each song, each participant was encouraged to fill out their emotion scale based upon that Likert scale. And at the end, they were also asked to fill out whether or not their emotions had shifted qualitatively. So they were asked to print out whether they were happy, or they were sad, as well as the Likert scales that were presented to them. So some of the results. The music modality, 39 participants reported 93% were using headphones as their primary modality. More than 50% of them reported a 3 out of 5 on the Likert scale pertaining to how they most often listen to music, which is school, which is quite surprising. I feel like in school it's taken that we don't often listen to music here, but given on my study, 50% of students are listening to music while they're here in school. In public space is included with listening to music out loud, and 66% of students reported listening to music outside of school as well. And this is a graph here showing what happens as far as the changes between Group 1. You see here that this is the first set of songs listed in this order: Time, Santeria, and 24K. Santeria was my particular focal point. Santeria remained consistent, so that song remained consistent for Group 1 and Group 2. You did see a positive change in liveliness, happiness, and lovingness. Those went up with each progression of song. However, between songs 2 and 3, which is Santeria and 24 Karat, you see a flat line. There's no statistical change there. And that's due to the fact that I believe Santeria and 24K only have they're the same range in as far as BPM. So there was no emotion shift there between songs 2 and 3. This is Group 2, and you see the exact opposite of Group 1. You see changes across all songs and liveliness, happiness, and lovingness decreased as well. You do see sadness go up, and that's going to be because the order of the songs are now reversed. So you do see 24 Karat was played first, and Santeria was that second consistent song, with Time being that last third song. And you do see that between songs 1 and 3, there's a gradual decrease, as well as between songs 2 and 3, between liveliness, happiness, and lovingness. And sadness goes up in songs 1 and 3, as well as songs 2 and 3 on this particular grade scale here. So summary of the results. My original hypothesis was supported that emotions do shift. However, this cannot be generalized to all music genres. I only chose 3 music genres. There are multiple, maybe thousands of different genres. There was one participant, I remember looking at his particular survey, he reported Bollywood. Bollywood's really, I don't think very many people listen to Bollywood, but there's many different genres in which people listen to music. Based upon the research at hand, music does change, and that goes back to that wine tasting theory, that if we only sample a certain amount of songs, we're not getting the full spectrum of what people listen to and the full emotion shift between what people like in a given song and what people do not like. And Group A showed a statistical increase in levels of emotion between songs 1 and songs 2, as previously stated, as well with Group B showed a statistical decrease in levels of emotion between all songs. Some of the limitations. The study only used one modality, and that's speakers, through which music was heard. There's headphones, there's many different ways in which you can listen to music. I mean, Coachella's coming up, so that's going to be a big thing. So that's another way in which music is listened to, and I feel like if we provided many different ways, we could have different results. And the study may not have been large enough to apply to all musical efforts as well. There is certain styles that people like listening to. My participants didn't have a choice whether they listened to Santeria or 24 Karat. They were given these songs, and that brings me to my next point. They weren't given a choice, and I feel like through choice, maybe the results may have been different, because some people may have not liked the songs that I chose, or vice versa. And for future research, I could include a bigger and more extensive look. Something that I was looking at and that I was wondering after I proposed my research was that, well, maybe emotion shifted within that minute or two that I was playing the song. But what if over the course of the day, their baseline may have switched from happy to sad, and it may not have stood there. It could have changed. And so a longer study over time, maybe a longitudinal study or something that's very extensive, maybe follow some participants over time, and provide many different genre choices as well. Like I said, I only chose 3 different genre choices, and I feel like if we were able to expand this particular research, we might be able to provide a much vast majority of different music. Some of the implications of my research, the music could be an important aspect in learning, that we might be able to incorporate this into a work setting or a school setting, allow for music breaks, during our class times, or maybe even given the choice to choose a song at work. Because I don't know how many of you work retail before, but like retail, you hear the same songs over and over again at work, and I feel like at some point people get tired of that. And if we gave people the choice of whether they listen to a certain song during the day, it might affect their mood as to how they perform at work or how they perform at school. And the take-home message: the music is everywhere. So if we can manage to somehow integrate it into professional settings and settings where music isn't necessarily allowed, or it's not looked upon as something to do at work, we might be able to allow stress levels to decrease. And every day should be a party, and I feel like we should just live it, because music is very important. As my studies show, there's significant changes in which mood is changed, and if we can somehow manage to bring that into perspective with professional development or business developments, we might be able to break through as far as people having a great time at work and not really hating their time there. So, thank you. Any questions?
Yes. You have 2 groups.
Yes.
And they each heard the songs in different orders.
Yes.
Why?
So my original hypothesis was to test whether emotion had shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured that if I played different songs, I wouldn't know whether the shifts would be significant enough, because I wouldn't know what may have affected that particular participant, or those group of participants rather. So I chose to keep the same songs and reverse the orders to see if there was a shift change, so to keep something consistent.
Okay, thank you.
Another question, which emotions was associated with which genres that you examined?
So liveliness, happiness, sadness, and lovingness were all associated with all three songs. However, there were changes between sadness in group 1 and group 2, because the order was now reversed. But there were changes between all songs as far as the emotion shift. Yes?
What other genres would you use for this or in a future study to kind of explore a wider range of emotion?
Like I said, I did see Bollywood in my research. I would use genres maybe from different cultures, maybe to see if culture plays a role in how music is listened to. I would choose songs or genres that people aren't necessarily familiar with, maybe.
Can you share a little bit about how students were reporting in terms of feeling before they started before they started listening to the music?
Of course. So there was a question that wasn't listed in this particular survey. Well, not in this slide. It was my first question. My first question asked the participants to list how they were feeling as a baseline. And there were 16 different emotions there as well to choose from. Most reported happy and thrilled, which is good, because MCU is a great place to be, I think. And most students reported being happy and thrilled.
Despite being the same, you still saw those shifts across both conditions, right?
Yes, there was a shift between happiness and sadness across all of the studies. However, sadness, you did see a decrease and an increase between both groups as well. Any questions? No? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jessica Homazad, and today I will be talking to you about my research on father-daughter relationships and sexual intimacy. So growing up, I always had a very stable environment. My mom and my dad were both very present in my life, and I always kind of wondered about how that relationship affects the development of children. So more specifically, my father, he was very attentive, loving, and supportive, and I was very fortunate to have that. And it kind of made me wonder about those who are less fortunate and having that sort of relationship with their dad. It made me look at the decisions I make and think of whether or not that's a fair reflection of why I made those decisions, and to see if that is a basis of our relationship. In late middle school and early high school, so many of my friends were starting to become interested in boys, and it almost seemed as if they were in a rush to get everything done. And this always kind of made me wonder about if that had anything to do with their relationship with their father. I started wondering questions like, are they really ready for these steps? How do they know what they're even doing? And why are they in such a rush to do these things? These questions I grew up wondering ultimately led me to my research question. Does father absence in his daughter's life affect the age at which she first engages in sexual activity? There's much importance and relevance in this research question because this essentially affects our entire world. The way we are brought up means everything to our development. More specifically, the first 2 years of life are the most crucial and important. Not having supportive, loving parents could make all the difference in whether or not a teenage girl has an unplanned pregnancy, is sexually assaulted, or is engaged in an unhealthy, abusive relationship. Previous studies on my research were conducted by Ellis and Peers in 2003, and their studies demonstrated that while father absence may not be pinpointed as the only reason a girl becomes involved in sexual activity at a young age, it is one of the reasons she is more prone to this behavior. This study also found that father absence in a girl's life is a main risk factor to the daughter's future intimate relationships. In terms of behavior, A girl who grows up without a present father is more likely to be at risk of adolescence pregnancy due to expressing behavioral problems. So essentially, the first male in a girl's life is supposed to be her father. So when she doesn't have that attention from him, she seeks it in other ways, and that may be through males who may not be getting into the best business and could lead to teenage pregnancy. In another study done by Mendel and Piers in 2009, research supported that girls with absent fathers partook in sexual relations at earlier ages than girls who had fathers in their lives. This went to show that family structure is an important factor for children, and a steady household heavily impacts growth of children. Parental involvement has a major influence on the maturation of a girl, and is essentially because he is supposed to be the first man in her life, and he teaches her these qualities, morals, and values. Father care might have more to do with the development of his daughter than he knows, and a good father-daughter bond teaches self-respect and even impacts outside factors such as social skills. Showing up is one thing, but truly being there makes all the difference. With that, I'm moving into my research. So although my main focus was on sexual intimacy, I kept my hypothesis a little bit more broad so that I could go look into different aspects of this relationship as well. That being said, does father absence play a role in a girl's development was my ultimate hypothesis. And using previous research conducted, I created my own study that was similar to the purpose of not only determining how a girl's development is affected, but also to see what specific aspects of the father-daughter relationship were shifted based on the quality of the father care and relationship. My participants consisted of 41 young women enrolled at Marymount California University at the college age, and the women were diverse in ethnic backgrounds. They were 41.5% Hispanic, 26.8% white, and 12.2% African American. The rest were all kind of a mix. And the mean age was 20.8 with a standard deviation of 2.6. All participants were recruited on campus, and with permission from my professors, I conducted my surveys in class. However, there was also a capstone fair that was presented for capstone students to recruit participants. While I did not compensate any of the participants in class, the participants who were there for the capstone fair received free pizza, and they were entered in a raffle. For the materials portion of my research, my main variables were measured on a scale of 1 to 10, so this is an example of some of the questions on my survey. To measure father presence, self-esteem, and insecurity, I asked these three questions. How present is your father in your life? How comfortable are you with yourself? And how insecure would you say you feel about yourself? And after these questions, I asked them to rate that on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not very present, for example, and 10 being extremely present in their life. And I had one open-ended question, which is also one of my main variables, and that stated, at what age did you first engage in sexual activity? And for that question, I was just looking for an age. A simple answer. The other portion of my survey was on my categorical variables, which were assault, pregnancy, abusive relationship, and alcohol. I asked, have you ever been sexually assaulted? Have you ever been pregnant? Have you ever been in an abusive relationship, and do you drink alcohol? These were all yes or no questions in which they were either to circle yes or no or simply write yes or no. And lastly, I looked at home life, which was formatted a little bit differently. I asked, what is your home life like? And rather than a scale of 1 to 10, or yes or no, or open-ended, I gave them 3 simple answers. 1, chaotic, 2, or unstable, 2, somewhat stable, and 3, very stable, and asked them to either circle one of the 3 or write 1, 2, or 3. While conducting my data, I started off by explaining my project to the participants. I told them what I was researching and went on to discuss the survey that I would be giving them, that it would be completely anonymous and they would have no worries in people finding out who turned in each survey. After making them feel as though they were in a safe environment, I passed out my consent forms and had them sign those and then collected them, and then had them fill out the survey with their own pen or pencil. When they were finished with the survey, they were instructed to place them in a manila folder, and they were thanked and dismissed. My ethical concerns include the possibility of bringing up memories that may not be so pleasant to think about. A couple of surveys reported that father was deceased, so that was a concern there with bringing up negative memories. And also the fear of exposure and identification. Most people don't necessarily want to openly talk about such personal things, and I realized that while conducting my research, so I kind of tried to keep my questions a little bit as personal as I could without them being too personable. And finally, my results. So these charts show the statistics of my main variables. So on the right here we have age, father presence, attentiveness, self-esteem, and insecurity, and first sexual encounter. And these were the means and standard deviations of these results. And these were all my primary variables. And then on the left are my findings of the categorical variables. So 22% of the women reported that they had been sexually assaulted, 2.4% reported they had been pregnant, 19.5% reported that they had been in an abusive relationship, and 61% admitted to drinking alcohol. So next we have this scatter plot, which kind of shows the correlation between father presence and self-esteem. So basically this dotted line right here shows that there was a positive correlation between these two, meaning that the more present a father is in his daughter's life, the higher self-esteem she has on a regular basis. The line going up is what demonstrates that positive correlation. As one goes up, the other one goes up as well. And these are two more scatter plots that showed similar things. So here we have father presence and the age of first sexual encounter. So the more present the father is in his daughter's life, the longer she waited to have this first sexual encounter. So as you can see here, this dot here showed not that great of a relationship with father and a young age in which she first engaged in sexual activity. And here we have father presence and home life, and this also showed a positive correlation in that the more present a father was in his life, the more likely she was to report that the home life was more stable. Overall, these results showed that father presence is positively related to self-esteem, age for sexual encounter, and home life. And in terms of a daughter's home life, girls who had higher self-esteem and who had their first sexual encounter at an older age also reported to have steadier home lives in general. This means that home life is significantly related to self-esteem and first sexual encounter. And that's demonstrated here by these numbers. So Pearson R39 was 0.47 and with a p-value of 0.001. And first sexual encounter related to home life is Pearson R33, 0.37 and a p-value of 0.01. To analyze my categorical variables, t-tests were used. So here I measured abusive relationships and sexual assault with father presence, and you can see by this bar graph that the better relationship with father, the less likely for an abusive relationship. So there's this no column here. And then the same thing with sexual assault. The better the relationship with the father, the less likely a girl was to be sexually assaulted due to her level of self-respect. Home life was higher in girls who had never been in an abusive relationship or sexually assaulted. To summarize my results, in the end, I found that my hypothesis, does father absence play a role in a girl's development, was supported. And this study touched on many different factors in order to see just how important father presence is in a girl's life. My results show significant positive relationships between father presence, first sexual encounter, meaning that the better relationship between father and daughter, the more secure and self-respected a girl feels as she grows up, which also causes her to be less likely to engage in sexual activity at a younger age that she may not be ready for. I found that this mostly comes from home life, the quality, how present the father is, and not only that, but also shows how attentive he is to his daughter. The results were similar to the results in the studies that I looked at as well. And for my limitations, They may include confusion. I found that some girls were unclear on what some of my questions were asking, so I was asking a certain question and they may have interpreted it differently than the way I meant it for it to be. And this may have been due to the way that I asked the questions, which is something to be looked at in the future. And the survey was also double-sided, so at the bottom of each survey, I put an arrow to implicate that there was another side to it, but somehow still I had to throw out a couple of surveys because they were incomplete and the questions on the back weren't answered. And lastly, although my hypothesis was supported, I still would have liked to have had a bigger sample size just to see more in-depth results on what came out of it. Also, I guess I didn't have to use such a narrow age group. I wouldn't have used younger girls, but maybe older girls, just because even at this age, college level, some girls still had reported that they hadn't had their first sexual encounter yet. So maybe having older women would have skewed these results differently. For future research, I would probably ask more questions just to get more in-depth results on my survey. And I would be sure to address that there are two sides to the survey, so not only drawing an arrow at the bottom, but maybe even just having two separate pages rather than double-sided paper, so that it's seen that there's more than one page. And lastly, make it more clear to ask any questions while taking the survey. So rather than just having girls assume what I was asking, maybe tell them that they can ask me at any time if they needed to, if they were unsure about any of my questions. Overall, I found this topic to be significant and relevant to the world in general because father-daughter relationships are everywhere, and it's crucial to understand the importance of this relationship. All in all, a father provides so much more to his daughter than you could ever imagine. Gestures as simple as showing up to your daughter's first basketball game when she's 5, or cheering her on in her cheerleading competition for the first time when she's 15 could make all the difference. That's it. Yes.
I actually have two questions. If there's not a father in the home, but there's a big brother or an uncle or a family friend that serves in that role, would that have the same results, do you think, from what you've read in your research, that it's the male figure that cares, or does it actually have to be the father?
Mm-hmm, yeah, I kind of looked into that a little bit too and found that it is, more importantly, it is more important to have the father figure rather than it be specifically the father. Obviously, there are minor changes that would be made based on the development if it wasn't her actual father, but it is mostly important that the father figure is there.
Okay, so it's the figure. My second question, you referred to sexual assault and the father's presence in the home. And I think a sexual assault usually isn't something that a girl has any control over.
Right.
Rape is not necessarily anything, and it crosses cultures and ages, whatever. So I'm not sure I understand the relationship between a father's presence and the higher rate of sexual assault if the father is not present.
Mm-hmm. And for that, I guess I should have been more specific. What I meant more so was the kind of situation she may get herself involved in, the people she hangs out with and all that is kind of a factor into sexual assault as well. So maybe having a more present father would guide her to make better decisions in where she is. And I like you said, you're right though about it being uncontrollable.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Were there any surveys that you looked at that were not what you expected? So say they had a really good father presence in their life, but they were pregnant at an early age or started having sex at an early age. Did you come across any of that in your research?
Yeah, it was more rare, but I did notice that with a couple of my surveys that even though the relationship was good, you could actually see it on one of my slides. Even though there was a good relationship with the father, some girls still had engaged in sexual activity at a younger age. Yeah, so that was part of my results as well.
Had any of your participants reported having an adopted father, and maybe if that played a role in whether their father was not their biological father, but
right.
somebody?
Yeah, I wondered about that too when I was beginning to research my topic, but at the same time, it kind of like I said before, it was more so a father figure in their life. So I didn't have a question on there about adopted fathers, but I did read that an adopted father was pretty much essentially the same as having a biological father. as long as he was there. It all kind of depended on his attentiveness to his daughter, basically, the quality of the relationship. Yeah.
You had a couple of variables that measured father presence. So you had father presence, but you also asked about how attentive and how close they are with their father.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about the 3 different ways that you measured father presence and whether they aligned
Mhm.
similarly with the other?
So I measured them in a couple different ways, like she said, with attentiveness, the quality of the care, and also how there for his daughter he was. So by that I mean, has he been there since birth? Did he just start becoming part of your life, later as you've already grown up? And then also the attentiveness towards his daughter. So, he could be there, you could see your dad every day, but that doesn't mean you have a good relationship with him, so that was kind of a factor in it. That's what I meant by attentiveness, how supportive is he of you in your life, how can you go to him if you have a problem, that kind of a thing. So that's what I kind of meant on those variables and how I got basically the quality of the relationship and how that made a difference in her development. Okay. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for my Psychology and Criminal Justice Capstone. My name is Casey, and for my research, I took a deeper look into the Missouri approach, which is a more rehabilitative technique, and compared it to a more punishment-prone correctional facility. Now first, I want you guys to take a look at these 2 pictures as I describe 2 types of scenarios for you. In scenario A, imagine that you have a son or daughter who's been getting into trouble with the law quite frequently. But this past time they've gotten into trouble, they were sentenced to a correctional facility for 2.5 years. But this facility was about 3 hours away from your house, so you could only visit them about once a month. But the last time you were able to visit them, they told you that they had to wear orange jumpsuits every day. They didn't get a whole lot of physical activity. Maybe they made 2 friends. And that they live in a cell the size of your house bathroom. And the fact that they're getting punished every day, all day. Now take a look at scenario B. Imagine you have a son or daughter who's been getting into trouble with the law quite frequently. The last time they got into trouble, they were sentenced to a facility for 4 to 12 months. This wasn't any ordinary correctional facility. This was more rehabilitative focused. So they really focused on rehabilitating not just your juvenile, but within your family as well. They wanted to make sure that your child rehabilitated and reconstructed their behavior through communication and coping life skills. So it's a huge difference between these 2 scenarios. And I want you to think about that throughout my presentation, because there's a huge difference between punishment and rehabilitating juveniles and what it does to their future behaviors. A little bit deeper into what I'm studying, my question was how the Missouri approach will reduce recidivism rates. So you ask, what is recidivism? Recidivism is a reconviction, a rearrest, or probation within the first 2 years of release. Now I want you to take this gentleman right here. He's a good example of a high recidivism rate. So this first photo right here, he was 14 years old when he was arrested. The second photo is when he was 16. This third photo is when he was 17 years old. So because he re-entered the criminal justice system multiple times, he has a high individual recidivism rate. Now, past research says if a juvenile returns to the same environment, meaning if they go into the same family with abusiveness, homelessness, drugs, and alcohol, they're not going to rehabilitate their behavior. They're going to stay with the same peers, they're going to not change their behavior, and they're going to want to keep committing crimes because they're getting what they want and they're not rehabilitating their own behavior. So some look into the Missouri approach. It's built around 6 main concepts. The first is that youth are placed into smaller facilities that are more closer in residential areas and closer to families itself. So it's really built around themselves rehabilitating within the family and rehabilitating within the community. Second is group treatment is a priority, not isolation. So not isolating inside a cell where you're possibly with one other person or by yourself, but you're with a group of about 10 to 12 other juvenile delinquents who are changing their behavior as well as helping you change yours. Third is communication guides a healthy relationship, not violence. A lot of these juvenile delinquents don't know how to talk with words. They don't know how to solve their problems other than drugs and alcohol and violence. So the Missouri approach really helps develop these types of communication skills. 4, success after release is a high priority focus. This means continuing education after release and continuing communication and coping skills amongst the treatment plan that both the family, the juvenile, and the service coordinator who takes the case from the beginning to end really helps the juvenile connect with that after release. 5 is juveniles would get back released into their family environment, thus working out problems in the home is a huge priority to reduce recidivism rates as well. And then 6, after release treatment is mandatory. So in order to explain how Missouri kind of uses the rehabilitation techniques in order to reduce recidivism rates, I used past research to compare when a juvenile was re-entered to the adult criminal justice system when they were released from juvenile justice 3 years after. So for Arizona, they had a 23.4% recidivism rate, Indiana had 20.8%, Maryland had 26%. Now take a look at Missouri, which is 8.5% recidivism rate. That is a huge difference. And all of these states comparable to Missouri are all punishment-prone correctional facilities. You can see that all rehabilitation facilities are a lot different than punishment. So a little bit deeper into what I'm studying, my hypothesis was the fact that it supported what Missouri Division of Youth Services says, that rehabilitation techniques will reduce the recidivism rates of juveniles from the ages of 12 to 18. Now, I started studying the Missouri approach last year in one of my criminal justice classes. And I was super intrigued by this concept and the fact that rehabilitating juveniles rather than punishing them, because that is such in our mindset. If you have a bad behavior, you're going to punish your kid because you think that's what changes their mindset, that's what changes their behavior. But this concept actually reduces the recidivism rate and really helps them focus on behavior change. So I worked really hard to see Missouri firsthand and experience these facilities. So I was actually invited at the end of January to go to Missouri and see these facilities at hand. So I did have interviews with about 10 staff members and about 6 different juveniles full length for my interviews with 5 different facilities. And I'm going to tell you, it was the most incredible experience I've ever had. To see these juveniles talk to me about their crimes, open up, and develop these types of communication skills that they would have never had if it weren't for this rehabilitation program. Some of the types of facilities that they do have in Missouri, they have 4 levels. Level 1 is a day treatment center, which means that they have status offenses or misdemeanors, but they don't need to stay the night at a facility. It's more educational and therapeutic processed. Level 2 is a community-based residential facility, and the stay for juveniles is about 4 to 6 months. Level 3 is a somewhat serious crime, and the stay is 6 to 9 months in a moderately secure facility. Level 4 is a secure care facility where the stay is about 9 to 12 months for the most serious crimes. And all of these facilities have the same rehabilitative techniques, except for the fact that the secure care facilities are the only ones with a fence around it. Now for my results, I had a combined set of themes within my interviews, which are regions, transformation, beliefs and philosophies, staff training, inside the facilities, what happens with release, and why won't states change into this approach. So to start with regions and transformation, again, most of my research stayed with the Southwest region, but Missouri is divided into 5 sections, with a total of 41 facilities broken down into all 4 levels. For beliefs and philosophies, they really focus on the 5 domains of well-being, which is social connectedness, stability, safety, mastery, which is making sure that they know every decision they make has a consequence, and meaningful access to relevant resources. Now, the mission statement of the Missouri approach really focuses is not just the juvenile, but the family and the community. So they really focus on community service, as well as making sure home life is going to be treated as well. Staff training is extremely important to this approach as well. They have about 20 core sessions that each staff member has to go through to make sure that the beliefs and philosophies are really guided through the staff, and to make sure that they really help reduce recidivism rates by rehabilitating the juveniles. So the first training is orientation and beliefs and philosophies to make sure that punishment is not the #1 priority. Rehabilitation and reconstruction of behavior is. A couple others are CPR and first aid, safety and security, and group dynamics is a huge one to make sure that group therapy is very important within the facilities. So now my favorite part of the presentation, we get to take a deeper look inside the facilities. So for the education, they have a fully accredited educational program with a fully credentialed teacher. So they go to school every day for about 8 hours, and they have libraries, computers for research, and then in June, at the end of every year, they do have a ceremony for those students who have graduated high school, even middle school, because there are various ages from 12 to 18. And for those students and juveniles who have graduated from high school but are still in the system, they are able to take college courses as well. So it's a very individualized educational program. For treatment, if you take a look at this picture right here, this is group treatment. This is a very sacred time for juveniles to kind of talk with each other and make sure that they're able to problem solve in case they had a problem during that day, maybe that week. They're able to talk and just communicate with each other their problems. It's really helpful and healthy for these juveniles to talk with each other. And then these are two of my favorite photos. Some of the facilities do have specific activities for their own juveniles. So take this one, for instance. This facility had more adventure-prone activities. That means that they put in juveniles that have like aggression tendencies or more tendencies for drugs and alcohol, and used it towards going outside and doing other activities so they can learn how to do that outside the facility. So when I visited, they were getting ready to go on a 3-day backpacking trip. And these are kids 12 to 18, let me remind you. So they were super excited, and they got back from a kayaking trip about 2 weeks prior to that as well. So they're very adventurous, and they can use those skills outside of the facility. And this right here is a day treatment center. They take on welding projects. And this was very community service based, so they welded park benches and school desks. So they were very community based. There was also music programs, and one of the facilities did have a cooking class. And one of the juveniles that I met was pretty overweight. He was actually the one that gave the tour of the facilities, because all the juveniles give tours of their facilities. And he started doing this cooking class within the facility. And he started losing weight. He was taught how to eat healthier, how to cook healthier. And he was the happiest kid you would have ever met. I mean, you would never see that kind of behavior inside a correctional facility. You just wouldn't. And they were teaching him how to live a healthier life, and he was happy because of that. For recreational activities, most of the facilities do have a basketball court, volleyball court, or some kind of green area where they go outside quite frequently. Physical activity is very important to the facilities as well. Tours was also big. Each child is assigned to a tour every week, whether it's doing dishes or vacuuming or dusting or just anything within the facility, because it does need to get cleaned. And most of the facilities are just like regular homes, which is also very unique compared to correctional facilities. They're just like you walk right past a house and you would never know that it's a juvenile facility. So each kid does have a tour, and every Saturday they do their own laundry, so they learn how to be self-sufficient. And then one of the greatest pictures, this cat on the copier. Most of the animals, or most facilities do have a house pet to teach responsibility as well. There was a cat, and I believe I saw 2 dogs and a turtle as well. For the meals, a couple of facilities are divided in houses for bigger areas, but they still hold about 10 to 12 juveniles. So sometimes with the bigger ones, they do have more of a cafeteria-like area where they sit together, but more of the home style have dining rooms. So I got to experience both. It was actually really incredible to see how mannered these kids are. And most of the time they did ask me about California and how the weather was and if there were so many beaches and how that was. So it was kind of cool to just communicate with them about my lifestyle as well as theirs. For sleeping, this is one of the most different between correctional facilities because they have bunk beds. Now, every facility is unisex. So they do sleep in the same room, but it's individualized comforters and colors, so it's more humane environment. It's just incredible to see that it's more of a home-like that you're rehabilitating a juvenile and not within a correctional facility. One of my favorite photos too, this was a 12-year-old's bed and he tucked his little stuffed bear inside the sheets. That's really cute. So for release, what's unique about the Missouri approach is there's no set date that a juvenile is released from. So for correctional facilities, say you're released April 19th, 2017. That's the day you're getting out. While Missouri approach has it between 4 to 12 months, depending upon how serious your crime was and how much you need to be rehabilitated. So, and they usually have to do certain programs in order to make sure their treatment plan is complete. Now a little bit into why won't states change? Because maybe you're thinking to yourself, this approach is incredible. This is like heaven on earth for juvenile delinquents. Why won't these states change into what this approach is? Well, Missouri transformed from a broken system. In the 1930s, they had about 2 training schools, one for boys, one for girls. That was incredibly dangerous and violent. There were murders that happened just about every week. So in the 1970s, they finally closed these training schools and developed more rehabilitation programs. Now, some states don't believe they have broken systems. Many of them say, hey, we implemented an educational system. We implemented rehabilitation techniques. Why should we change all of a sudden to your approach? So a lot of people go see the Missouri approach and tour it, but they don't necessarily think, hey, we're not going to change fully to this. Now also, Missouri's minimum wage is $7.70 per hour, while California's is $10.50, and we're increasing every year. So the Missouri approach consistently says they're very cost effective, which is true at some points. But for other states, it might not be cost efficient for that state in particular, especially for property tax and any kind of individual needs as well. They're very recreational, and perhaps Missouri just has that cost efficiency, and maybe another state doesn't. Also, facilities in Missouri are rundown schools or homes for sale or other various activities. Where, say, California again, we're very impacted. We don't have a whole lot of room such as Missouri does with all these fields that could just take down rundown schools. We don't have that availability. Neither does any other, a whole lot of states. So that's also another reason. So to summarize, my hypothesis was supported. The Missouri approach does help reduce recidivism rates within juveniles ages 12 to 18. And overall, every juvenile that I spoke to was very happy with their treatment. I was expecting even sometimes to get kind of fake smiles and fake spiels about the Missouri approach and why this is the greatest. But they were genuine, they were sincere, they told me about their crimes, they told me about their life stories, and I really wish I had time to show you guys a couple of recordings that I had, because it's incredible to just hear the way they talk, and hear their changes in their voice and their behavior. It's really incredible. Some limitations that I had, I did only visit boys' facilities. The girls' facility in Missouri was about 2 hours away, so it was really hard for the distance. And then I only did visit the southwest region of Missouri, and I did not partake in a visit to a secure care facility. But again, all the facilities do have rehabilitation programs and techniques that are the same. So to get away from this, I hope that we realize that if we punish juveniles, are we really helping them how not to commit crimes? Are we teaching them to communicate their words and not their fists? Are they learning to use adrenaline means for other activities, not violence, not drugs? Are they learning to amend any situations at home? Well, the Missouri approach does do that. For future research, applying this into another state that has correctional facilities and implementing the beliefs and philosophies for a smaller facility and doing a longitudinal study to see if it really reduces recidivism rates in other states would be very impactful. So in the end, I really do think we need to focus on such facilities and build the philosophies, train the staff. Once those are implemented, then you slowly but surely take the juveniles into the facilities. But they got such negative feedback that it never happened. And since 2014 and the idea that it was going to be implemented, nothing has been discussed about it since.
They need to hire you to do that.
That's what I'm hoping to do in the future. Yes, Dr. Wade.
Did you have any issues with consent? Many of these children are minors that are in the program and you were able to interview.
Right.
And yet I would assume you didn't have to get parent approval in this case. So how did this work with IRB and with talking to children?
So my approval was basically from the facility manager. So it was really interesting to me because the juveniles this was an honor to do the tour. This was an honor for them to be chosen by the facility manager to give me a tour. And it was very individual. So it was just me and it was the Southwest Regional Coordinator and a service coordinator. And so they took us on a tour. And for most facilities, the one that gave the tour was the one that I was able to interview. For lunch participation, for those kind of conversations, that wasn't more of my interview. So I really focused on the ones that gave the tours, and they were pretty much, I basically said, tell me what you want, but tell me what you don't want. I mean, don't tell me what you don't want. So I made sure that if they wanted to tell me about their crime, they could. If they didn't, they didn't. I didn't pressure any of them or anything like that. Neither did the facility manager, which was actually interesting to me because they were the ones giving the tour and they were the ones trying to make the difference within the mindset. So I really found it interesting that no one felt pressured at any time. And so the facility manager in general was the most.
Then what you weren't doing surveys with the kids.
No.
So it wasn't actually the study, it was more interviews with them
Correct.
to find out about a program. So in terms of IRB, it really wasn't then subjects. It wouldn't have fallen under.
It did go, yeah.
You went through
reviewed it, yes.
Oh, yes.
It was reviewed and approved.
So a lot of my interviews were previously talked through I had to discuss my research with the facility managers before I went to that facility. So I did have to do a site visit request form, and that site visit request form went to all facilities that were in the Southwest region. Those 5 in particular were the ones that said, yes, you can come research our facility. I'm sorry, I should have reiterated that.
No, that's okay. Well, it's just interesting that in California, it would all fall under, I think, Title 22. Group homes, and I mean, it just seems like it would be harder in California to have gotten this wonderful opportunity.
You know,
had.
I first spoke to. Am I doing okay?
You're good.
Okay, I first spoke to the deputy director assistant of Missouri DYS, so the entire Missouri DYS, and. He got me in touch, so I did an interview with him. He got me in touch with the actual director of Missouri DYS. I did an interview with her. I really pleaded my case, and she turned me down. She said, no, I'm sorry, I don't see a reason for you to come do your research. You know, and I thought about it. They have state officials, they have probation officers, they have state legislators that come take tours. What is a bachelor's degree student needing to come take a tour of our facilities? You know, that's a lot of protocols, it's a lot of security. Well, I started saying, you know, this isn't something for my school now. This is something that I'm very passionate about. This is something that I want to take in my future. I'm funding my own trip. I want to come see your facilities. This isn't a grant through my school or anything like that. I just would really like to see this firsthand. I don't want to read about this in articles. I want to see it. So I finally made my case to her like that. And she was like, okay, well, you really made your case. Let's get you out of here. So I worked again with the deputy director assistant, and he got me in touch with the Southwest regional coordinator. Her name is Trish Long. So she was able to coordinate the facilities. That's when I did the site visit request form, and she was able to send them out to the facilities. So it was amazing, pretty much. Yes, Carlos.
2 questions. One of them is, what happens with a juvenile once, I guess in this case, he reaches the age of 18 and he hasn't been approved to sort of be released?
Yeah, so it depends on definitely the age, but because the community in Missouri has fully transformed, this means officers, judges, community itself has transformed in this rehabilitation mindset. They're all on board with this focus. So if a juvenile turns 18 and they haven't necessarily finished their treatment, a judge will most likely say, okay, DYS can keep them until their age of 21. Now that can happen, or if they're really still not doing the treatment, they will commit them to adult prison, but that's very unlikely for their rehabilitation mindset.
Okay. My other question is, what is Missouri's philosophy on adult prison? Is it the same thing?
It's very interesting, because I asked that question too, because Missouri has the death penalty. And I found that very interesting for a state that wants to rehabilitate their juveniles but can execute adults. And I asked that same thing to some of the staff members. And they said, well, our main focus is to not get juveniles to adult prison. I mean, they said our adult system wasn't necessarily the most damaging as it was for juveniles. When they had the training schools in the 1930s, and when they developed these when they released the juveniles from the training schools and they developed these new facilities, they kind of developed areas where, yeah, they still have rehabilitation programs in the prison, but it is definitely not like this. So it's really weird, kind of in a way, to see that it's such rehabilitative minds for juveniles, but not as much for adults. But, I mean, that's another study for another day, I guess.
Casey, we are sadly running out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much.
Hi, my name is Song-Ji Kim, and I did my research on assessing media usage and anxiety. Starting with the research question, for 1 to 2 decades, we've been using the internet for looking at relevant information, for leisure, and even for important business. But we wanted to ask, how is media affecting our psychological mind, particularly anxiety? In what ways can it be a threat to anxiety and addiction? And are there significant reasons to believe media has a strong influence on anxiety? While we did our research, our search for articles related to our research question was mostly limited to subjective experience rather than objective experience. So in 2011, researchers observed 248 elementary school children and their exposure to hurricane disasters, because where they live, they experience a lot of hurricane disasters. One group watched the calm weather video, while the other group watched the hurricane disaster weather video. After they had finished watching the video, the group that watched the hurricane disaster video had significantly higher anxiety, even though they had not been directly exposed to the hurricanes. Overseas to the Middle East, a group of researchers in 2012 studied 203 Israeli undergraduates. where terror is a regular exposure to them. They found that there was a positive association with terror reports in media and high levels of post-traumatic distress symptoms. They've also found that after exposure to the terror events, avoidance coping versus problem-focused coping was a stronger predictor of post-traumatic symptoms. And to define what avoidance coping is that they decide not to confront or talk about the terror events, while problem-focused coping, they do talk about the events, or they want to do something about it. Recently, in 2015, a researcher surveyed 23,533 residents in Norway. They have found that anxiety was positively correlated with social media, but was negatively correlated with video games. Instead, for video games, they have found that depression was positively correlated with it. Other articles we found tried to find interesting results, such as people's responses to facial cues and their thoughts after watching a political ad or participating in political discussions. But based off of the past research, our hypotheses are as follows. Increased exposure and high usage of social media correlates significantly and positively with anxiety and social insecurity. Our participants were 45 Marymount California University students. 24% were male, 76% female. And we obtained our participants through research day and contacting individual professors. Our survey. The first part of our survey answered some general demographics such as age and gender. The core of our survey consisted of questions about internet and media usage and anxiety. Most of them were structured based on the 5-point Likert scale. Additionally, we also added a generalized anxiety disorder 7 scale to assess their anxiety level in general. Here are some of the question examples. What activities do you do on the internet? Do you use the social media, online gaming, the news, or education? Which device do you mostly use? Cell phones, tablets, laptops? How many hours do you use the internet on a daily basis? How do you feel about the media affecting your anxiety and stress level today, between strongly disagree to strongly agree? Strongly. How much has media influenced your decisions and life outcomes? And has the internet media benefited your life? Our standard procedure, the students were offered through research day and individual classes, as I said. And at the start of the session, they signed a consent form, and once they were done with the survey, they were given the review sheet, and thanks for their participation. Our first results. In our descriptive analysis, we have found these main results. 60% of the total participants use the internet for 4 or more hours regularly. 69% used social media the most as their most frequent activity in the internet. Between strongly disagreed to strongly agreed, almost all the participants answered between neutral to strongly agree on the internet being necessary. Interestingly, however, almost all of them also answered between neutral to strongly agreed on the internet being overused today. Next, we did a significance testing for all of our correlational analysis. We have found 3 significant results. The first one was between media's influence on anxiety and media's influence on life decisions. Our general analysis for this was, if media has high influence on life decisions, it strongly predicts high anxiety. Our second significant result was between internet usage hours and likelihood of not using the internet for 1 month, but I could have reduced that range a little bit. The analysis were as follows. As internet usage hours increase, the likelihood of living without it decreases. Just further emphasizes how integrated the internet is to our life today. Finally, our last significant result was between the safety and knowledge of browsing the internet versus having no internet for 1 month. This was a rather interesting analysis. As people were more confident about exploring the internet, they are less likely to live without it for 1 month. Conversely, if they're not used to the internet, then they're not as reluctant to abstain from it. Before we move on to our conclusions, let's reiterate a couple things. Our hypothesis was that increased exposure and high usage of social media correlates significantly and positively with anxiety and social insecurity. Our first significant result shows a positive correlation between media's influence on anxiety and on life decisions. Our second significant result shows a negative correlation between internet usage and likelihood of living without it. And our last significant result shows a negative correlation between safety and knowledge of the internet and living without it. Our overall interpretation of our result is as follows. Social media is the most frequent activity, and cell phones are the most used device. And second, if whatever people see in the media induces anxiety, it seems relevant to the participants' life decisions. Interestingly, most participants agree on the statement that it is being overused, but they still believe that it's still a general necessity in life. However, our hypothesis was only partially supported because there was no significance between internet usage hours versus media causing anxiety. So it might be important to note that it really depends on what they are being exposed to. Limitations. Since our participant number was 45, we could have benefited from more participants. Most of the participants were female, as they accounted for 76% of our total participants. We could have seen less percentage in social media based on past research. Our data was isolated in an undergraduate college in California, and there were plenty of confounding variables to consider. First was environment. We in California believe we live in a relatively safe environment. Second, That being said, even if we do live in a safe environment, the political situations may not really reflect on the environment we're living in. And studying major status may have also affected our results, as we assume most of the participants were psychology majors. We would like in the future to get more detailed with our main questions about media usage and anxiety. We also could potentially tackle different questions regarding how media affects their anxiety, or probe further on what they are being exposed to. If someone were to replicate the study and have international connections, the research would greatly benefit from participants of different cultures. We also believe in the beginning of our survey, we could have added pre-existing psychological health problems and income status, in case they are strong factors to our target results. And that's it. Questions?
Sean, I have a question for you. A previous researcher had a similar interest as you, and you sort of alluded to this, that in the previous researcher's work, she found that women are on social media more than men.
Yes.
Is that what you found as well?
Yes, that's what I've generally found in the comparative research, past research in the past decade.
In the part where there was a relationship to life decisions, did you provide types of life decisions they might be choosing from, or what? How did you define what would you say were some of the life decisions being impacted, or was that just for the student to interpret?
That was mostly for the students to interpret.
Okay.
I guess maybe most of them would think about what they see in the political media, and if the economy is changing, how do they react to the changing world in general?
Alex?
I know you talked about social media and the internet, and then you were just saying it depends what they're choosing to look at. Did you by any chance get any feedback from your participants about what they were using the internet for, or what they were looking at on their devices?
No, I guess I omitted or didn't really consider before I conducted the survey. But yes, I do want to get into detail of what they are being exposed to. There's unlimited possibilities.
I think it's interesting to look at social media and anxiety. I mean, I haven't read anything on this, and I know personally if I start checking out Facebook and I'm tired and I'm like in bed, I'm exhausted, I don't sleep then. It's like it affects, by going through social media that much, it has a negative effect then in order for me to be able to sleep easily. Then I'm just like this. So I find it really interesting that you've done a whole study and that you've focused on this social media and anxiety, because I think that that wasn't something I'd ever thought about.
Yes.
Except don't look at Facebook before I go to bed, because it keeps me awake.
Yes. Unfortunately, the reason why I wanted to dive deeper into this is because there was still not a lot of research on this specifically. Like, I was born in Korea, and South Korea is still facing a military standoff. Not a standoff, it's just a tension. And, every day, I'm pretty sure Korean citizens would look up TV, just see what's being developed in their own country, especially also because they've impeached their president.
So there's a fear among people right now there,
I suppose so.
or an anxiety, as you say.
Yes, and
we're still learning how to adapt to our technological world. And things we start to set our own rules. Ever since, for example, the election, I have learned to stay off Facebook when I'm tired,
Yes.
because I post things that I'm not proud of. So I have to establish our own rules, and that's new for me. I'm an old guy, right? So I have to bounce with the times, and we have to learn as we go. It's a very important subject. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I guess everybody can see it fine, right? Pretty much. So, my name is Daniel Sandoval, and then today I did my capstone presentation on the relationship between emotional intelligence and then alcohol use. First off, I would just like to begin and explain what emotional intelligence is, pretty much. And it's basically the supervision of one's emotions and their capacity and awareness of all of the groups present in the current environment. In my study, I also understood basically it's also about thoughts, emotions, thinking, our thought processes. And it was basically studied by Daniel Goleman. He had wrote a bestseller basically called Emotional Intelligence and Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. And I just believe that this was fundamentally important for me to study because our whole lives revolve around intelligence, and I believe this is what matters for everybody. So for the instruments basically that I used, the methods section pretty much, my goal basically was to locate undergraduate college students at Marymount California University with no particular age or grade level. And basically I conducted an assessment from 1 to 5, a scale pretty much, basically, and this was done through random convenience sampling. The total amount of subjects that I tried to get was basically around 50, but I ended up basically getting around 62 subjects. And basically there was really no risks associated with this study. Some may feel like it could be psychological, like some questions basically on the survey might be feeling too personal for a person to answer, or basically they might feel a little bit insulted, but I never found that as an issue while I was doing my surveys. And I believe also this was interesting for me to do because I don't feel like anybody else here has done that before, and I just wanted to be the first one to explore that. And pretty much I conducted my study at the Ocean View campus, waterfront, anybody else I ran across. So as a brief back history for prior research studies, basically, several other researches, basically such as Fernandez-Baracol, Alcalade, Externa, Pizarro, in 2006, they basically figured out that emotional intelligence affected the state of mind and their personality. Basically, they conducted an experiment and did a social situations scenario. And another experimenter, Aravelli, he focused on personal relationships in 2007. Petrides in 2006 focused on chronic abuse, and Winters, Clift, and Dalton focused on the same thing in 2004. And other researchers basically saw a relationship that was occurring opposite of what they had thought when they had conducted the study. And then pretty much they saw factors such as low self-esteem, anxiety, and then other factors that were occurring after the individual consumed alcohol. And basically it brought down their emotional intelligence, and then they were basically in a lower state, less positive, and pretty much that's what occurred. And then another study focused by Whitley and Hutchinson and Pope and Qualter in 2007 found that high school students had high trait personalities, and their basically emotions were more positive after consuming alcohol. And basically through the meaning of this study with the students that I was conducting the surveys with, there were 62 of them, and this was done in the spring semester.
and they were all invited at their own voluntarily accord to participate. And I noticed there was a higher amount of females that occurred after conducting my surveys versus males, which was a little bit surprising. About 57.3% were present, and males were around 42.5%. And it was just interesting also because I noticed while I was doing the study that more females were consuming more than 3 to 5 drinks, with males consuming less than 2 to 3 drinks at Marymount California University. And that was something that I saw that was like kind of interesting. And then there was a 0.2% with one being transgender, and then the overall mean age that basically the mean average that I noticed with the age group was 21, pretty much age 21, and the standard deviation revolved around 1.57. And they were also asked about their residency, whether they lived on campus or off campus. Some of the demographic characteristics that were most interesting to me was that these were all students at the undergraduate level, and that basically these students pretty much were basically not only just able to answer all these questions, but they also felt intrigued about participating in the survey. They also invited some of their friends too from other classes too to participate, and they just say, I'm interested, I'm excited, you know. And that's basically what they were doing, and at the same time, you know, it was just exciting when everybody participated in these surveys. So I'm going to go over the stats part basically and my results that I came up with in terms of my surveys. After basically going through the scale and then reviewing my surveys basically due to the scores that I came up with, and by using Pearson's R, basically I figured out there was a lot of variability between the level of significance. So the numbers are pretty high up there, and there was a minimal positive relationship, which means there was activity going on with their emotions, happiness, autonomy, self-actualization, and some of these emotions basically were very positive. And basically also with the survey as well, they basically reported more than 3 to 5 drinks. And basically the last results that I showed, basically this was after they consumed 3 to 5 drinks, and that's what they reported through the survey as well. And basically it was done through a questionnaire, so they were given 3 parts to the survey also. And that's pretty much what happened when I was doing the surveys. But in prior research studies, what I've noticed in the correlation between my study and the prior study that occurred was a lot of the same things had occurred pretty much in the identification of social occurrences, and pretty much a lot of the questions that were asked were revolving about social scenarios in the surveys that I was using, calculating their emotional intelligence scores, like basically their behaviors, their moods, and this can all be calculated on a scale for emotional intelligence. Through Daniel Goleman's scale, basically, he has his own scale that you can use to predict the mental state of mind among students or anybody who wish to have participate in the survey. Other researchers have, I guess, replicated his instruments, Fernandez Baracol and Externa in 2006, and Marabelli in 2007, and basically they focused on these particular aspects of their studies. And it also very is good, important. It's important because it determines outcomes in our lives and affects decision making as well. But overall, in my findings, when I showed in my hypothesis, it was basically to see if there was a correlation between alcohol and emotional intelligence, but there was a minimal positive relationship for undergraduate students at the college level. And basically, the ratio was pretty interesting itself. The scale itself was very effective in determining an outcome, and 62 participants were recorded, and an average was pretty interesting itself for me. So for any future recommendations I have for anybody else who wishes to continue to study or pretty much go forward and try to replicate, it could be conducted in a quantitative manner, and they can implement the same instruments that I use to calculate emotional intelligence, the scales, and if they wish to contact me, I can give them advice. They can also repeat it in a qualitative study, but search for a larger amount of participants. I feel like with the amount that I had, there was some interesting results, but you can go as far as up to 200 people if you wanted to. And, you know, continue to do research, investigate, but be patient and just explore. And then, you know, if they wanted to select a certain group of people, they can do that as well, but mostly random convenience sampling was effective for me. And pretty much that is it. And then if there's any questions for anybody that you have in the audience.
Questions for Daniel?
So I think I missed the part where you were describing the drinking aspect. So how was that measured in your survey? How did you ask how?
Basically, it was done through a questionnaire,
Uh-huh.
and they basically had a scale of 1 to 5, indicating the scores, and then it was calculated through Pearson's R, t-test, and that's what was used primarily for me to get those numbers that I indicated in my study.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to thank anybody else who helped me also with this survey and helping me craft a paper and the capstone. So thank you anybody out there.
Any other questions for Daniel? Okay, thank you very much.
My name is Jessica Arias, and my topic is on parental involvement in college students' sense of detachment, self-efficacy, and independence. So a little background about how I came about this. Throughout my college years, I grew up in a family where I was always nagged about what I should be doing, what I could not do, and even to the extent of what time I should be home. It got to the point where my mom would sit on the couch waiting for me at night until I stepped inside that door, that house. So my parents were always overly involved and strict. I understood their reasoning when I was younger, but as a college student, I expected a little bit of more freedom, being that I was transitioning into a young adult. However, that was not the case. Instead, they became even more overly involved as I grew up, not giving me the confidence and independence that I wanted. That being said, throughout my college years, some of the effects that I began to notice due to overly involved parents were I began to feel incompetent of what I could and couldn't do. I also began to drift from my parents. Things I didn't want to tell them certain things because I felt like they were just gonna nag, and judge me on everything I told them. And lastly, I became less independent and felt like I had to rely more on them. Which led me to my research question. What are the effects of parental involvement on college students' experience? Although the intent of parental involvement is to help the transition of college students into the real world, it can be argued that overly involved parenting has a negative impact on college students and their development. This topic will introduce in detail about how parents who are overly involved can be detrimental. My research will help examine the prevalence of parental involvement among college students and the effects of parental attachment through students' independence and self-efficacy. Therefore, based on my research, one of the articles that I examined was helicopter parenting and college students. So what is helicopter parenting? It's parents who pays extremely close attention to a child or child's experience and problem. Children's experience and problems, In this article, research shows Polly Scheffern, a psychology professor, did a study on the effects of helicopter parenting and the effects of college-age students. The students were from the age of 18 to 23, and studies showed that 41% of students had to text or call their parents to update them about their location, and 41% said their mothers still did their own laundry. So isn't that a little surprising? So going back to this article helps bring a valid point on how detrimental this can be for those students who are beginning to emerge into adulthood, and how this may have different effects on them. Another article that I examined was on the relationship between college students and helicopter parenting relating to self-efficacy and peer relationships. So a sample of 190 undergraduate students were studied, and studies found that low general self-efficacy was linked with perceptions of an overbearing mother and father. And in other words, students who perceived their parents as intrusive felt a diminished capacity to perform or accomplish tasks. And to give a brief description about this article, it emphasizes on the idea that helicopter parenting does not allow students to learn from their own mistakes or deal with their consequences on their own if their parents are always running to save the day. So, which brings me to my hypothesis. Due to some of the findings in my research, I came to the idea that parents being overly involved will be related to higher levels of college students' sense of detachment, lower levels of independence, and lower levels of self-efficacy. So, for my research, I had a sample of 42 undergraduate students, age range from 18 to 26, with a mean of 20.24 and a standard deviation of 1.75. 74% female and 26% male were examined, and with ethnic backgrounds such as Black/African American with 10%, Asian/Pacific Islander with 17%, Caucasian with 17%, and Hispanic being the most common with 38%. For the class standings, it was 24% freshmen, 21% sophomores, 17% juniors, 31% seniors, and it was interesting to find that with my participants, the majority of them were living with either both parents at home or living with one parent at home, making it 52%, more than half of the total percentage of participants. I'm sorry. For compensation, it was given in different ways based on the method the survey was given, which I will explain in detail and later on in my presentation. For my materials, the consent form, instruction script, survey, a debriefing form, and pens was given. The variables that I focused on were GPA, parental attachment, parental involvement, independence, and self-efficacy. So in my survey for GPA, it was self-reported. Students were given the option. It was an open-ended question, so they could either say their GPA, or there was some students who did not specify what it was. For parental attachment, there was 4 questions relating to closeness to mom and dad on a scale of 1 to 5, and relating to the frequency of talk to mom and dad. So how how many times a day or how many times a week or how many times a month did you really talk to your mom or dad? And that was based on a scale of 1 to 6. So for parental involvement, there was a mean of 7 items with the Likert scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not at all like him or her, and 5 extremely like him or her. And an example of a parental involvement, a question that I had for parental involvement was, my parents try to tell me what I can and cannot do on nights and weekends. So for independence, I had 6 items. 4 of the items were on a 5-point Likert scale, 1 being never, and 5 being almost always. And then 2 categorical items, a yes or no question, and an example of one of the 4 items in the 5-point Likert scale was, do you do your own laundry? For self-efficacy, there was 10 items based on a 5-point Likert scale, with 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. And one of the questions I had for this was, thanks to my resourcefulness, I know how to handle unforeseen situations. So for my procedure, the survey itself took no more than 5 to 10 minutes. I recruited participants at Marymount California University through Psychology Research Day and a classroom visit. After surveys were completed, a debriefing form was given to participants, thanking them for their time. And compensation was also given through either pizza on Psychology Research Day or extra credit for my classroom visit. So for my descriptive stats, what I found with my variables was that GPA had a mean of 3.38 and a standard deviation of 1.8. Father Talk had a mean of 5.3, meaning that within a scale of 1 to 6, participants talked to their father I'm sorry, talk to them constantly. And then for Mother Talk, I had a mean of 5.8 and a standard deviation of 0.67, with a scale of 1 to 5 again. And for my parental involvement mean, I had a 2.2, average mean of 2.2 and a standard deviation of 0.76. And for my independence score, there was an average mean of 4.3 and a standard deviation of 1.1 with a scale of 1 through 5. And for self-efficacy, I had a mean of 3.5 on a scale of 1 through 5. So for my results, although parental involvement was not related to GPA, it was significantly related to student independence and self-efficacy in a negative relationship. So as you can see, for independence and parental involvement, the higher parents were involved, the less independence there was. And then for parental involvement and self-efficacy, the more parental involvement, the less self-efficacy there was. This means that, I'm sorry, there was a negative direction for both of these graphs. So for my research, it was also found that higher levels of independence were related to higher levels of self-efficacy, and since it's a positive relationship, and higher levels of frequency talking to dad was related to GPA. Lastly, in this graph, it shows that gender differences in independence showed that males had a higher independence rate than females. So, based on my results, it was determined that my hypothesis was supported. Parents being overly involved were related to lower levels of independence and lower levels of self-efficacy. There was also a negative relationship, meaning that high levels of talking to dad are related to lower levels of independence. And lastly, independence score is positively related to self-efficacy. The more independent, the more self-efficacious. I'm sorry. For the most part, my results aligned with my previous findings from other studies, and such as lower levels of self-efficacy linked with perceptions of overbearing parents. So for my limitations, one thing I did wish I had was a larger sample due to only 42 participants. I did have a hard time receiving that because I was trying to contact professors, but I didn't really get a response, and yeah. Also, better wording on some of the questions on my survey. I did have some of my participants have me clarify some of the questions, so I wish I could have gone back to fix some of my questions to clarify. And lastly, more male representation due to the guy-to-girl ratio here at Marymount. There's definitely way more girls than guys here. So for future studies, gender differences, I wish to see more in depth to see if any differences come up based on parental involvement. And also measure cultural aspects, especially Hispanic culture, because coming from a Hispanic family, I've noticed that some of my peers who are also Hispanic have the same relationship as me. So for my take-home message, so why is this important? Well, from personal experience, I think it is important to bridge the same understanding of a student's relationship with their parents. Although the intent of parents is to protect us, it is also crucial for college students to have the confidence and freedom to make mistakes and grow from them. Thank you. Any questions?
While you were analyzing self-efficacy and independence, have you considered how the undergraduates were interacting with their parents, such as, in one way, a parent is giving them orders, being the authoritarian parent, but the other way, the parent is being very involved in conversations, rather than like giving them chores and tasks.
So for independence, I did measure different aspects such as ways of transportation, ways of cooking, ways of just doing your own laundry. So as for independence, it was that self-efficacy, it was measured in a way of being able to be confident in what you do, being able to feel like you had the confidence to do certain things without your parents.
So you found that the undergraduates who were highly self-efficient, did they interact with their parents less, or?
They interacted with their parents I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The students who were self-efficient, did they interact with their parents less or more?
They interacted with them more. I'm sorry, I would need to further just do that.
I think it was last. I think you started out last.
I'm sorry.
I'm interested to know if you shared any of this with your parents. Do they know that you did this and what was their reaction to it? And will you speak to our parents during new student orientation?
They do know, and she laughed about it. But she gave me a whole lecture about why she does her parenting style. But overall, she was really proud, and she came to a kind of an understanding with me because we had a disagreement about curfew. So. Okay.
Okay, so hi, my name is Dulce Lopez. My study was engagement after school programs. So the background. After school programs rose historically from changes in the school, in the labor force and formal schooling. There's a declining need for children to participate in the workforce, so that expanded their leisure time. The idea that more structured playtime increased in the U.S. So in the 20th century, after-school programs grew tremendously, and they created mission statements. These mission statements included specific goals aiming towards academics or social skills or personal growth. And they also went beyond child care and provided support to working families and enhancing their skills. So it is estimated that 8.4 million children participate in after-school programs in the U.S. Participation is due to several factors, including dual house income, the acceptance of after-school programs, and the opportunity to foster the growth and development of children. So current programs vary in location, funding, size, hours of operations, and their specific goals. So for example, some after-school programs may be based on school grounds or community agencies, and some after-school programs may begin with academic assistance at the beginning, coupled with a few other activities that include social, culture, or personal skills activities. So why is engagement important? So there's three main factors that I think are important. Personally, I was a product of the after-school programs, but I participated in the literacy program. So this program enhanced students' reading levels or language arts and grammars. And I attended this for a year, and I think it helped me because the following year I didn't have to go back. Secondly, as you might know, our president's budget proposal, he's planning to cut the after-school programs, and so that he's cutting that into billions, and that's obviously going to affect many children who can't afford tutoring sessions or have a place to go. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. And thirdly, there has been a lot of research that's shown that participation in after-school programs can help raise grades and encourage positive attitude in learning. And a child's development is easily influenced and molded by others. So providing them with support and guidance can be a vehicle for developing and enhancing skills in various aspects that are social and cultural. And research also links participation to social competence and positive emotions, considering the program quality. It has also shown enhanced personal confidence, learning to work with others, and increased empathy, as well as reporting higher quality of experience, like utilizing more skills and feeling more challenged, when in after-school programs compared to other social settings, And it also provides opportunity to develop and apply critical literacy skills for students considered low in rating. So my current study, my research question was how is engagement after school programs related to students' development? And my hypothesis was participation after school programs confirms the positive relationship with the program quality and skills acquired. Researchers have argued that the benefits of after school programs cannot be meaningfully understood without considering the program quality. So there's not a lot of data that supports that goes into depth on the program quality. So I decided to emphasize on that and do a little more research on it. My participants, there were 31 students involved in the study, which included 4th through 8th grader students, and they were recruited from 2 after-school programs, the literacy program and the sports program. The ages varied from 9 through 5, and the mean was a 12.10. So 35.5 were male and 64.5% were female. And for Latinos, there was 80.6%, Black were 16.1%, and mixed was 3.2%. These students were compensated with cookies. The materials, it included 3 forms, the consent form, debriefing form, and survey. The consent form, debriefing form were given to the kids to give to their parents. For the survey, consisted of 2 parts. The first part, it consisted of statements where the students had to rate to the extent of that they agree. And it was on a 5-point Likert scale. So the 1 referring to strongly disagree and 5 strongly agree. And it measured for variables, social skills, academic skills, personal growth, and the program quality. For social skills, it was composed of 4 items. So an example was, I can easily make friends. For academic skills, it was composed of 6 items. I am motivated to complete my homework on time. For personal growth, it was composed of 5 items. I take responsibility for my own actions. For the program quality, it was consisted of 5 items. An example was after-school programs only stay on track. For the second portion of the survey, it consisted of 7 open-ended questions, and it was regarding the participation in the after-school program. It was a combination of responses across the 7 questions, and they were coded into themes of how the students benefited from the program. So some examples include describe how you chose the program, what do you like about the program, how do you feel the program has helped you, and how many days do you participate in the program. For the procedure, as I mentioned briefly, I recruited students from 2 after-school programs, the literacy program and the sports program. So for the literacy program, it was a lot harder to recruit the students because it's a 2-day program, so students either attend Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday. And so I went on the Monday, and because of the day in between, students forget to return the consent form, so I was only able to get approximately 8 back. So once I received the consent forms, I set them aside and I gave them the surveys orally, and I wrote down their responses just because they were younger students. And then the debriefing was given orally as well, and a debriefing form was given to them so they can give to their parents just because they signed the consent form, so they need to know what the study is about. So that approximately took 20 minutes. And for the second program, the sports program, that was handled differently. So because there were older kids, they were able to do the surveys themselves. And so I recruited the majority of my participants from the sports program. Just because, well, it's 4 days, so the students were in the program longer and they're older, so they're more mature. And so the consent forms were given, and once they returned the consent forms back to me, the participants were handed surveys. And they took their time, and the debriefing was given orally, and the debriefing form was provided so they can give to their parents. So the length was 15 minutes as well. The descriptive stats. So the means for the main variables refer to the extent of your agreement. My main variables were social skills, personal growth, academic skills, and the program quality. So for my first variable, social skills, the mean was a 3.96 out of 5. My second variable, personal growth, the mean was a 4.33 out of 5. For my third variable, academic skills, the mean was a 4.26 out of 5. And my fourth variable, program quality, it was a 4.39 out of 5. So for exploration purposes, I examined whether or not there were gender differences, and I found some gender differences in academic skills. So girls were more likely to report higher levels of academic skills than boys did. So the program quality is related to academic skills, personal growth, and social skills. So you can see the first graph, it shows the higher reports of program quality. There was higher academic skills. And for the program quality and social skills, the more reports of program quality, there were more reports for social skills gained. And for the third, personal growth and program quality, higher reports of program quality were related to higher reports of personal growth. The qualitative analysis. So to reiterate, things were found on a combination of 7 different open-ended questions. So these things that I was able to decipher from those questions were social benefits, physical benefits, academic benefits, personal growth benefits, and pleasure benefits. So 58.1% of students mentioned social benefits, 67.7% mentioned physical benefits, 29% mentioned academic benefits, and 74% mentioned personal growth benefits. And the majority reported simply of attending the program because they enjoyed it. So that was 90% that reported the pleasure benefits. And another gender difference that was found was boys were more likely to report physical benefits than girls. So the summary of results. I'm sorry. Some examples of pleasure included I love basketball and I am very good at it. Another one was I like that I can be with my friends and I can have fun. For personal growth, I like how it helps me learn new skills, and I feel it has helped me to be more respectful and more patient, because those two categories were the highest. So the summary of results. So participation after-school programs read into skills and benefits. And this ties back to research because several studies have shown significant changes when the student participates in the program because there's academic achievement, attachment to school, change of problem behavior, physical health, and various aspects of their social and emotional development. And the hypothesis was supported. So it's not only about participating in the after-school program, but it also has to do with the quality of the program. And so the quality of the students' experiences drives the development and academic benefits associated with the program. My conclusion, some limitations were I didn't have enough, I didn't have a variety of after-school programs. I only had 2. I think if I would have had more after-school programs, I could have had a diverse response, and that could have gotten more into depth about the quality of the program, as well as implementing questions regarding attendance and how long they've been in the program. So I can do probably like a comparison of those students who have been there for like several years are more socially competent compared to those who've only been there for a few months. And some ideas for the future is to include school records, to examine academics and behavioral observations, so to also examine personal growth and skills. And this can help us understand the relative effectiveness of the program components. And also research has suggested that it's not necessary to include like a major component of academics. You can also, without including that, you can also obtain higher academic skills. So my take-home message, just to encourage students or relatives to participate in after-school programs because it fosters a child's growth and development. In addition, just to be like aware of what's going on like in our society, because I mean, if there is those budget cuts, it's gonna like affect tons of children, and instead of progressing, we are gonna be going backwards. That's my presentation.
Questions for Lisa?
I was wondering, thank you, that was wonderful, and I think you had a lot of really good points. I was wondering, did it come up the difference between, were these programs the families paid for when it talks about literacy and sports, or were these open to any children? And was it on the school grounds, or did they have to go somewhere and have transportation to another location?
Okay, so my study was on school grounds,
Okay.
and they didn't have to pay to participate in the programs.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, because I just think, I've had a lot of friends who our kids were all growing up, they had to go to after-school programs or whatever, usually because both parents work.
Yeah.
And they seemed so distinguishedly, there were either the programs on school, which was basically play on the playground or in the auditorium and do your homework and then play, versus programs that were designed for that had art things or, different types and parents were paying a lot of money for.
Yeah.
To make sure.
So like I mentioned briefly, each after-school program has their specific goals. So some after-school programs focus on academics, while others focus on personal growth or social skills or a combination of both. So it just depends. But most after-school programs are founded on school grounds or community agencies. But most of them are funded by the government or through private schools. It's already included.
Were you surprised? I'm sorry.
No.
Great presentation, by the way. Thank you so much. Were you surprised by the difference between the boys and girls participation? Because I noticed that when you were presenting your numbers, I saw kind of like a difference between girls and boys.
I wasn't because females or girls tend to participate more in like tutoring or literacy programs compared to boys, where they rather do something like physical activities because they enjoy it. So I kind of expected it.
Thank you, Lisa. Were most of the kids that were participating in this program there by choice, or had they been recommended to be part of the literacy program, for example, because they needed it, or?
Okay, yes. So for the literacy program, they were recommended. just for they could improve their language arts skills, grammar skills, or like their reading level. And for the sports program, that's more of a choice. But they also have to meet the requirement of having like good grades. So that really also shows the academic performance, because you have to do well in school in order to participate.
And a follow-up question. Sorry. Yeah. I know that the majority came from the sports program, but do you think that there's a difference regarding the pleasure aspect of it between the people that are there by choice and the people that have been recommended for it, and the same thing with the academics regarding the sports program, or what was your feel on it, since I know you're familiar with the school?
Okay, yeah. So for the literacy program, I do think they didn't, it was more of a, I guess it was mandatory for them, so they didn't really enjoy it, but they were getting those benefits of doing well in school and improving their reading levels. And some did like it, some participated in both. Since they were able to do the literacy program, they were also able to do the sports program. And for the sports program, it was just, can you go back to
Yeah, like if they were talking about academic benefits as well from the
yes, because they had to do well in school in order to be able to perform in the sports program. And I mean, if they're doing it, it's because they enjoy it, so they have to do well. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I have another, I think it's so interesting. So if the kids were in the literacy program and they were required to be in it, and it was 2 days a week, assuming that perhaps they had to be in after-day care, after-school programs, on the other 3 days of the week, and if they got out of school, say at 3 and needed to be there till 6, was there another type of program they then went into for providing after-school? Was this like a program within an after-school program?
Yes. So there were also like enrichment activities. So they were able to do when they were at tutoring sessions, they were able to participate in the sports program, or they also had cheer for the girls who loved cheer, and they also had operations which focused on like gaining skills or like getting the insight in like careers. And there's also the Boy Scouts. So there were various other
activities.
Yeah.
May I ask one more question?
Yes.
You don't mind? Do you have time? Did you find anything in your research on the impact of the staffing, the training or the experience of staff who were running the programs, and their impact on how well the children either took pleasure in the program or gained skills?
Okay. Not in my study, but previous research has shown that staffing has to do a lot with it, because it has to do with the quality of the program. So the better trained the staff are, the most likely the students are able to gain skills or benefits from the program. So that has a lot to do with it too.
Any questions for Lisa? Thanks.
Hello everyone, my name is Diana Figueroa and my presentation is called You're Just Friends. So before I start, I want to paint a mental image in your head. So let's say that you are relaxing, you're in a park, the breeze is nice, you're into the shade, and then you see two people crossing your path. They're like walking across you, and it is a male and it is a female. And they are having fun, they're laughing, they're nudging each other, they're giggling, and they're even like hugging and touching each other. So what is your initial thought when you see them? You're dating? Yeah. So a lot of people actually do like think people are dating when they see like a man and a woman together. They think, oh, they're together, or you know, they are attracted to each other. So you're not alone when you say that. So my topic is about attraction between, you know, young adults, and I came up with this topic after listening into my psychology of gender class. So my professor, she actually told us about a study that said a heterosexual male and a heterosexual female cannot be friends because there's always going to be a layer of sexual attraction. And so I'm a heterosexual female and I have plenty of guy friends, and I was like, that's not true. I have tons of guy friends, you know?
So I wanted to go more into depth about it. So my research question is there such thing as just being friends? And if there's not, what factors spark that attraction? So there is past research on this topic. So for example, there's one by McDonald and Mehta in 2016. They wanted to look into the homosocial norm. So according to them, the homosocial norm is when, it means that we only want to be friends with people of the same sex, and if we want to be friends with someone of the opposite sex, it's because we are attracted to them. So that's what they defined it as. So they examined gossip websites and gossip newspapers to see if the homosocial norm was publicized a lot, and they found that celebrity friendships between males and females were over publicized. So it was like a huge scandal if they were together or anything like that. So it was emphasized a lot. There was another one that looked into the audience challenge, which is Sanuver and McWan in 2014. So the audience challenge is just when you look at two people and they get mistaken for a pair, like a couple, or romantically involved. So they looked into school settings and they found out that audience challenge did appear often in school settings, and that friends in cross-sex friendships, they do take their peers' perceptions in mind, even though they know they're just friends. They still bring that, oh, are we together? Because their peers think so. And it does cross their mind a lot, no matter how many times they've been mistaken as a couple. That's what the research says. And then there was another one done by Ferdman, Flagman, and Metamortis in 2009. And this one looked into behavior expectations within romantic relationship, cross-sex friendships, and same-sex friendships. And they just wanted to compare. They wanted to see which behavior expectations were present in each type of relationship. So they did find that the behavior expectations were higher for romantic relationships compared to cross-sex and same-sex. But there were some similarities found. There was closeness, social companionship, and relationship positivity. So there was a lack of research in finding attraction within same-sex friendships. So I kind of wanted to generalize my topic and make it open to everyone. So my hypothesis, it is hypothesized that being just friends is impossible based on the past research, and there is always going to be an underlayer of attraction. And the factors that spark that attraction for women are closeness, intimacy, and attractiveness, while the factors that ignite attraction for men are beauty, confidence, and humor. So based on the previous research, women are attracted to a partner who wants to be close to them, who gives them intimacy, affection, so that is why I chose that. And while men, it says based on the past research that they are attracted to women who are attractive and who have a lot of confidence within themselves. So my participants, I had 59 young adults, 80% were females, 20% were males. The age ranged from 18 to 28, but the average was 21. 80% were college students and 20% were not. The majority for ethnicity was Hispanic with 68%, but others included 15% Caucasian, 5% African American, and 5% more than one ethnicity, and 2% were either Armenian, Asian, European, or Middle Eastern. For sexual orientation, 71% were heterosexual, which was the majority, but others include 14% bisexual, 2 demisexual, homosexual, or pansexual, and 10% chose not to identify. With relationship status, 53% were single, which was the majority, but 42% were in a relationship, and 2% were married in a complicated relationship or did not specify. And so the participants were recruited through Research Day here at Marymount. I also went into my positive psychology class and distributed my survey, and then I did an online version of the survey. For Research Day, the participants were compensated. They were given free pizza, and then they were given a raffle ticket so they can win a gift card. But other than that, there was no other compensation. So the materials I used, I had a consent form, which is a form that basically tells the participant that a general, broad description of what my topic is going to be about. and it just says if they are uncomfortable, they can skip any questions that they want, and if they wanted to, if they were really uncomfortable, they can just back out of the study and nothing would be, they wouldn't be affected in any way. And then I had a debriefing form, which was given after the study, after they turned in the survey, and it just basically told them exactly what I was looking for, what I was studying, and then if they had any questions, they could contact me or Angelica. And then I had my survey, so I had a physical survey and an electronic survey. The physical one was a pen, pencil, paper kind of survey, and the electronic version was online. It was done through Google Forms, and that it was just the same thing, just in an electronic version. Both versions asked for background questions, so like ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, etc. And then there were 3 other additional sections, which was the friend section, the ideal friend section, and the ideal romantic partner section. So for the friend section, it consisted of 11 questions. The participants were asked to think of a person they had that is a friend of theirs, and it had to be of the gender they were attracted to. So they had to keep that friend in mind while they answered the questions. And then there was the ideal friend section, which also consisted of 11 questions in the survey. And for that section, they had to think of what would make their ideal or perfect friend. So while they were answering the questions, they had to think about that. And then the last section was the ideal romantic partner section. Just like the ideal friend section, they had to think of what would make their ideal or perfect partner while they answered the questions. And all the questions were based off the importance of various traits in mate selection throughout the world by Hatfield and Rapson. So that is just a table that lists traits that males and females like in their partner. So for example, these are some survey questions that I had. So for example, one was attractiveness in the table by Hatfield and Rapson. So I put my friend is good looking, and then they would have to rate if they disagree or agree on a Likert scale, a 5-point Likert scale. So they would just say they strongly disagree or strongly agree. And so for my ideal friend, needs to have similar views as me, and it would be the same thing. And my ideal partner needs to spoil me with hugs and kisses. It's the same thing. So procedure for my physical version of the survey, on research day, students would come to me. I didn't really have to, go look for them. They would come to me. And then when I came to my positive psych class, I told them what my survey was about and then distributed it. But for both versions, for the research day and my in-class visitation, I both told them what my survey was about, and then they signed the informed consent, and then I would give them the survey, and then once they were done, they would give it back to me, and then I would give them the debriefing form, and so all the materials were turned in, and that was it. And they were debriefed either orally or through, for research day, they were debriefed orally, and then in the in-class visitation, they were giving a physical copy of the debriefing form. And the electronic version, I put the link of my survey on my Facebook, and then I wrote in my status like what age group I was looking for, so it was 18 to 30. And then when they clicked on the link, it would go to the informed consent. And they couldn't proceed through the survey unless they said yes to the informed consent. So if they said yes, it would take them to the survey, and then when they were done, I would give them a electronic version of the debriefing form. So both versions took about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. It wasn't that long. So it was not that hard either for them. And then one ethical concern was the sexual orientation, just because it is kind of a touchy topic, and I know some people think that, they don't want to talk about that and they don't want to mention their sexual orientation. So I just let them know they could skip any questions they'd like, and nothing would be revealed. It was all confidential. So the results. So what I did for each section, I just tallied up these traits and made it into an average. So what I mean by that is that, for example, the friend section, I had questions that asked about attraction for their friend and then their likeness for their friend. So I split those up, and then I found like an average based on the Likert scale. So for the attraction, the average was 3.37 out of 5, which means they're kind of neutral with attraction, but it's kind of leaning towards the disagree side, so they they don't really have the attraction there, based on the whole results in general for that section. And then for the friendship mean, it was a 4.04 out of 5, which means they do have likeness for their friend, and it was like a totally agree. Not completely agree, but it was an agree. And then for the ideal friend section, all those traits were just how listing friendship traits, so I just took the average of all of those, and it was a 3.81 out of 5. So it's still neutral, like, so that based on the traits, they weren't really, it was like neutral. They didn't really like those traits, but they didn't completely love it or not like it, but out of 5. But it was still, they're leaning towards agreeing more than disagree based on the average. And then for the ideal romantic partner section, it was the same thing, and it was a 3.68 out of 5, so it's still neutral, but it's leaning towards the agreeing side. So I had to try to find if there was attraction within friendships, so I actually found a correlation, and it's a positive correlation between attraction and friendship. So that means that if attraction goes up, friendship goes up. If friendship goes up, attraction goes up. Or if friendship goes down, attraction goes down. So there is a positive correlation. So it does mean that there is not, it doesn't cause attraction, but there is attraction within friendships based on my results. I also found gender differences while looking at my results. So I found gender differences within the attraction mean, friendship mean, and ideal partner mean. So with the attraction mean, males were actually more attracted to their friends than females with a 3.78 out of 5, which means, again, it's neutral, but they're leaning more towards the agreeing side than disagree, and then females were 3.27 out of 5. With friendships, females actually took it with a 4.1 out of 5, while males were 3.8 out of 5. So the females were really agreeing with the traits that I listed, and they saw their friends as good friends compared to men. Ideal friend, there wasn't any significant difference, so I didn't have to really look into that. And for the ideal partner, females actually saw those traits more as a trait they needed for their partner compared to males with a 3.74 out of 5 compared to a 3.47 out of 5. So they were both neutral, but the females were closer to the agreeing side than males. Though there was also more male differences when I looked into the ideal friend traits, and these were like big significant differences. So for example, closeness, I listed if you wanted your friend to be close or not to you, like your ideal friend, and females really agreed with that. It was a 4.34 out of 5 compared to males who wanted a 3.5 out of 5. So the females really wanted an ideal friend who was close to them compared to males. And a good personality as well. The females were 4.4 out of 5 and the males were 4.08 out of 5. So they both were agreeing, but the females liked it more than males, I guess. And then trust was a big difference as well. It was a 4.55 for females out of 5, and then a 3.19 out of 5 for males. So females prefer to have a friend who they trust compared to males. And also for ideal partner traits, there were also a lot of, there were 3 gender differences. For affection, it was a big one. Females preferred to have an ideal partner who was affectionate compared to males. They scored a 4.06 average out of 5, and while the males were 2.66 out of 5. So the males really were leaning toward the disagree side more than the agreeing side for affection. And cohabitation, I asked them if they wanted a partner who would want to live with them in the future. Females took that with a 3.63 out of 5 compared to males with 2.91 out of 5. So females prefer to have an ideal partner who would want to live with them. And then children as well, I asked them if they wanted a partner who would want children in the future. And females took it with a 3.68 out of 5 compared to males who were 2.83 out of 5. So males really lean towards the disagreeing side more than the women. So. Then besides the gender traits, I found differences within the actual sections. So I had sections that, for the ideal and romantic partner sections that had similar questions. They were just worded differently. And so I took those questions that were asking for the same thing and compared them. And I found 3 differences with affection. The average for the partner was 3.78, which means out of 5, which means that the participants in general wanted a partner who was affectionate rather than a friend. And then as well with financial stability, the partner was 3.63 out of 5, and then the friend was 2.17 out of 5, which means that they rather have a ideal partner who's financially stable than a actual friend who's financially stable. And then confidence as well was a 3.85 out of 5 for ideal partner and 3.41 out of 5 for ideal friend. So they rather have a ideal partner who is confident than a friend who is confident. So in summary, attraction and friendship are positively correlated, so it does mean that there is attraction. If friendship goes up, attraction goes up as well. Men were found to be more attracted to their friends than females. Women preferred to have friends who were close to them, who had a great personality and had their trust. And females wanted a romantic partner who would spoil them with hugs and kisses, which is affection, would want to live together in the future, and also would want children in the future. So this shows that my hypothesis was supported by that. So now that we have these results, what does it mean? So it means that friendship traits and romantic traits are similar. They actually intersect a lot, so it's not, it's not abnormal. So the topic itself of having attraction within friendships is not taboo, it is not abnormal. It's actually pretty normal. It happens often, and past future research has shown that it does happen often. A limitation that I found was a lack in diversity in sexual orientation. Even though I opened it to all the sexual orientations, all type of cross-sex friendships, I didn't have a lot of, my majority was heterosexual participants, so it was a little bit of lack in that. And I think what could have been confusing in my survey was there was 3 sets of instructions. So maybe they got confused because I had to throw away some of them because I think they were thinking of either just a regular friend they had, like of the same sex, because, you could tell when you were looking at the results that it wasn't exactly what the instructions said, so maybe the 3 sets were confusing. So what now? What can we do with these results? So I think these results can help improve friendships and relationships. It can create new dialogue. It can create more communication within partners and friends. It shows that there is normality with this topic, that it's not something to be scared of. And for future research, I think that it would, since there is a lack of same-sex friendship research, I think it would be cool to do just same-sex friendships, attraction within same-sex friendships, and then compare them to cross-sex friendships and attraction. So remember that this is normal. It's not something to be scared of. There is attraction within friendships. People can like their best friends or whatever. So because of that, never let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. Thank you.
Questions for Diana?
This is really interesting. I'm wondering, did anything show what happens when that level of attraction or friendship within a couple, they're friends, and when one of them, they want more out of that friendship and attraction, how that leads then to maintaining that friendship if one person is not feeling satisfied with the friendship because of their own personal feelings. So that would be one question. And the other is the whole concept of friendship with benefits. When does this whole attraction thing, how did you find any of that playing out in your research, that people were able to maintain a sexual relationship within a friendship and they're not a couple?
Yeah. So for your first question, you can actually see when there was attraction with their friends based on the questions, because I asked stuff about the likeness just for the friends, just friendship, and then I asked for attraction as well. So I even asked are you sexually attracted to your friend? I think it was I had never been, so they would have to answer if they agree or disagree. So I noticed that when they were attracted to a friend, that question specifically would be rated strongly disagree, because it was I have never been sexually attracted to my friend. So I was able to see that, especially like when those questions were answered with like disagrees and strongly agrees. I was able to see that there was attraction with that. I couldn't like really compare, you know, like with the friends with benefits kind of thing, because I didn't do like 2 friends. I only did 1 friend, and I couldn't compare it to what the other friend thinks, you know. So I couldn't really do that. But I had research. I looked into past research, and it did say that, you know, that some people, they're too afraid to talk about their feelings because they don't want to ruin the relationship. So there wasn't anything about, well, I couldn't find anything about like friends with benefits, but they were saying that a lot of people just repress their feelings because they were like, oh, what if my friend doesn't like me back, and what if I ruin the relationship? So that's why it is kind of taboo, this topic, because they're like, oh, I don't want to lose my best friend, and this is weird, I shouldn't like them. So.
With the results that you just described, what would you want to ask qualitatively now that you know this, or what would you like to follow up with?
Well, I think I would, now that I have this results, I would actually like to talk to their friend, like the one that because I want to show that it is normal. Like, I've been someone who has liked their best friend before, you know, because your friend is someone that you like, it's not someone that you hate. So it is something that can happen easily because your friend is someone you really like, and if you see them as romantically, it's not abnormal, you know. So I think I would like to further my research, if I could, with actual pairs of friends, and then see if, you know, what it's like if they do like each other, or if one likes the other and the other one doesn't. So that would be cool.
Another question. Did you ask them about their like current status? You know, do they have a boyfriend or girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if that was said earlier, but you know, what was the results of that part?
Yeah. I asked them if they were in a relationship or not, and I just wanted to see if that would affect their answers, you know, because I wasn't asking about their partner, I was asking about their friends. So even if they were in a relationship or not, the majority were single, so it didn't really like affect the results too much. But it was still a big number were in a relationship, but I didn't see it, they didn't really affect the results from what I saw. Yes.
So did it identify if the friend and whoever they were talking about, their friend, were looking at this friendship, whether or not their friend was in a relationship with another person, and did that affect that?
I didn't ask if their friend was in the relationship, because it was more looking at like what they saw as their friend, you know, like how they saw their friend. So I didn't ask that, but that is something that could have been in there, because that probably could have affected the results differently. Sure. Yes.
What I'm actually interested in seeing in the future is actually having different age groups. If you actually have high school versus college versus adulthood, you may see a divergence in that. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Jacqueline Coots, and the title of my capstone project is The Role of Sleep on Academic Performance. But before I begin, I just want to take a quick poll. How many of you guys actually get 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night? Well, according to the National Sleep Foundation, each age group has a set requirement for the amount of hours of sleep that we should be getting per night. And so what's interesting is that as we age, we do in fact need less and less sleep, but to what extent are we actually receiving that less sleep, which, as you saw when I polled you guys earlier, not that many of you are even getting the 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So now let me ask you this. How many of you feel that even when you were in school, that as you got into more of your upper division coursework and you progressed through school and went from freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, you started to sacrifice sleep for school? Okay, well that's exactly what happened to me. As I progressed through school, I got into more of my upper division psychology courses, my upper division science courses, and all my assignments got tougher. I got more exams, more quizzes, and so I had to stay up later and later, and I started to miss out on more sleep. And I started to think to myself, how much is that really helping me or hurting me in the end when it comes time for tests and quizzes and exams? So I started to look into some studies just to kind of see if they really had the answer. So one study in particular that I looked at was by Ligori, Shuna, and Mazumar. And they looked specifically at class standing and the amount of sleep that one receives per night. And they looked at undergraduate students at Midwest University, and what they found was that freshmen on average slept 20 minutes longer than any of their upperclassmen. And they also found that as one progresses through school, they actually end up getting less and less sleep. Another study that I looked at was by Zeke et al., and they looked at graduate students now in regards to the amount of sleep that they get per night. And so they looked at pharmacy students at Auburn University, and they found that these students were actually not getting adequate sleep. They were sleeping 6 hours every night when they should be getting that 7 to 9 that I mentioned earlier, and whenever they had exams, they were actually sleeping 5 hours per night. So that was even less as well. And so what they found was that due to this lack of sleep, these students were feeling tiredness almost every day during class time, during study time, just all around sleepiness and tiredness. And so one interesting thing that they found too was that increasing one's sleep by just 1 hour increased their end of the semester grade by 11%. And my last study was by Bubble Boats, Brown, and Soper, and they looked at REM sleep in regards to academic performance. And REM sleep is essentially our last 2 hours of sleep. And so during REM sleep is when we consolidate all of our information. And so they found that those students who increased their REM sleep or just even retained their REM sleep, they performed significantly better on exams. And they also found that those students who try to cram and study the night before an exam, they don't do as well because they're not consolidating that information that they're reviewing the night before an exam. So these three studies essentially, they kind of alluded to the different aspects of sleep and academic performance, but they didn't specifically study those two variables. And that's exactly what I wanted to get into, is just to see really what the effects are between those two. And so that led me to my research question, which was, do students who get more sleep have higher GPAs? And that led me to my hypothesis, which is those students who get 7 or more hours of sleep per night will have higher GPAs and overall more success in the classroom than those who get less than 7 hours of sleep per night. And so, in order to test this, I recruited 125 participants. I had a pretty good even gender split, slightly a few more females than males. My age range was pretty broad, 18 to 32 years old. I looked at actually a variety of majors, but business was my most common. And I also looked at all levels of class standing, but sophomores seemed to be most common. And all my participants were recruited through Psychology Capstone Research Day, as well as through various campus visits at Ocean View and Waterfront campuses here at MCU. And compensation ranged from raffle tickets where we were giving out gift cards to pizza, to extra credit in some teachers' classes, but I'll get more into that in my procedure. So in terms of my materials, I had one 25-question survey that looked at my two primary variables, which were GPA and hours of sleep, and those were assessed through one self-reported open-ended question. And then I also looked at 4 secondary variables, which were caffeine, diet, staying up late the night before an exam, and trouble concentrating. And those each had one question in 11 overall questions in my survey pertaining to a 5-point Likert scale. And so, some sample questions from my survey. So these are my two primary variables, GPA and hours of sleep. And as you can see, these are the short answer open-ended questions for those two. And in terms of my secondary variables, these were the 4 that I looked at. And so students would see these responses and then they'd respond to that 5-point Likert scale. So if they read the statement, they'd rate it a 1 if they strongly disagreed with the statement, or a 5 if they strongly agreed with the statement. And so in terms of my procedure was slightly different between Psychology Capstone Research Day and the various classroom visits at the Ocean View and Waterfront campuses. In terms of Psychology Capstone Research Day, it was a little more relaxed. participants approached me. They were given 2 consent forms, one to keep, one to give back. Then they were given the survey, and once they completed everything, they were thanked for their time, debriefed orally, and then they were given a raffle ticket where we were raffling off various gift cards, and then they were ushered to go and enjoy some pizza. And in terms of the classroom visits at the Ocean View and Waterfront campuses, it was a little more structured. Teachers were contacted via email. Participants were interrupted from their normal class time, where they were given those 2 consent forms again, one to keep, one to give back. They were then given the survey, and once they completed everything, they turned in all materials. They were thanked for their time, debriefed orally, and then some compensation wasn't really given. However, some teachers did give extra credit. So in terms of my overall results and descriptive findings, I found that a majority of students had a 3.21 GPA with a 0.46 standard deviation. Most students were sleeping well. They slept 7 hours per night, which you can see here, with a 1.05 standard deviation. And I also looked at hours of sleep categorically. So 58% of participants slept well or slept 7 or more hours of sleep per night. And 41% did not sleep as well or received less than 7 hours of sleep per night. In addition, they reported a 2.7 out of 5 that they were closer to being neutral to the statement that they have trouble concentrating in class because they're too tired. They reported a 3.5 out of 5 that they were closer to agreeing with the statement that they often stay up late the night before an exam to study. A 3.1 or 3.2 out of 5 that they were more so neutral to the statement that they often have a balanced diet, and a 2.8 out of 5 that they are closer to being neutral, that they tend to consume caffeine in order to stay awake. Okay, so in terms of my results for this bar graph represents results more so for my 2 primary variables, GPA and hours of sleep. And this is more along the lines of my hypothesis, where I looked at hours of sleep categorically, so between those who slept well and those who didn't sleep as well. And so the group who slept well, again, was the ones who slept 7 or more hours per night, and the group who didn't sleep as well slept less than 7 hours per night. And so as you can see here, their GPAs were nearly identical. So the group that slept well had a 3.22 GPA, and the group that didn't sleep as well had a 3.20 GPA. So that just led me to conclude that there was in fact not a significant correlation between one's GPA and the amount of hours of sleep that they get per night. However, I also looked at this a different way. So I looked at GPA and hours of sleep, like for everyone in the group, so now without the categories. And as you can see here, there's dots all over the place, which again just means that there's no correlation. If there was in fact a correlation, you'd have dots sloped to the left telling you there was a negative correlation, or you'd have dots sloped to the right telling you it's a positive correlation. So again, it's just another reiteration that there's not a significant correlation between those 2 primary variables, GPA and hours of sleep. However, what I did find was that among those primary variables, there was in fact significant relationships between some of the secondary variables I looked at. So in terms of GPA, GPA had significant relationships with trouble concentrating, staying up late the night before an exam, and diet. So in terms of GPA and trouble concentrating, there was a significant, this graph here, there's a significant negative correlation because the line is sloped to the left, telling you that those who had the higher GPAs had less trouble concentrating in class. In terms of here, we have the graph for GPA and staying up late the night before exam. That also had a significant negative correlation because, again, the line sloped to the left too. So those who stayed up late the night before an exam often had lower GPAs. And in terms of GPA and diet here, there's actually a significant positive correlation. So now you see the line sloped to the right. And that's telling you that the ones who had the higher GPAs had more balanced diets. And I also did this same analysis in terms of hours of sleep. So hours of sleep had significant relationships with trouble concentrating, diet, and caffeine. So in terms of hours of sleep and trouble concentrating, which is this graph here, there was that significant negative correlation, again, because that line sloped to the left, telling you that those who received the most hours of sleep had less trouble concentrating in class. And then we also have hours of sleep and diet, which is up here, so those which had a significant positive correlation. And that's telling you that those who had more hours of sleep had more balanced diets. And then in terms of hours of sleep and caffeine, which is this graph here, there was a significant negative correlation, again, because that's line slope to the left. So that's telling you that those who slept more were less dependent on caffeine in order to stay awake. And so this is called the triangle, and I want you to remember it as the triangle because I'll refer back to it in my implications. But it kind of is unique to what I found. And so as you can see up here on the top, this is kind of what I've been mentioning throughout, is that there was not a significant correlation between GPA and hours of sleep, which were my two primary variables. However, trouble concentrating served as a linking variable, inadvertently linking GPA and hours of sleep to each other. And so what I mean by that is that those who had the higher GPAs had less trouble concentrating because they were getting more hours of sleep. And those who had more hours of sleep were better able to concentrate, so they had the higher GPAs. And this same triangle applies to diet as well. So those who had the higher GPAs had more balanced diets because they were getting more hours of sleep. And those who had more hours of sleep had more balanced diets, and that led them to have higher GPAs. So that's just kind of unique to what I found. That's kind of cool. And so in summary, there wasn't a significant relationship between my two primary variables, GPA and hours of sleep. So therefore, my initial hypothesis was not supported. However, I did in fact find significant relationships between those two primary variables, GPA and hours of sleep, among some of those secondary variables. So caffeine, diet, staying up late the night before an exam, and trouble concentrating. And so even though there was a great deal of data obtained from this study, there was in fact some limitations. So one crucial limitation was that the study was only conducted at one university, MCU. Therefore, a lot of the results may not be generalizable to all university students. For instance, MCU as a whole may get more or less hours of sleep than other university students. They may be better able to concentrate, have more balanced diets, may stay up late the night before an exam more often than other schools. In addition, they might have higher GPAs because professors might offer more extra credit, curve end of the semester grades more often than other programs or other universities. And they might have lower GPAs because professors might just be really tough graders. So definitely for future study, it'd be important to just look at a vast amount of universities and get the most accurate results for sure. Another limitation was that the study used self-reported data in terms of hours of sleep and GPA. And so due to that self-reported method, results may be questionable in terms of validity for sure, because students may feel embarrassed to release the truth about their real GPAs or their real amount of hours of sleep that they're getting per night. So for future study, it might be important to have almost like an anonymous log or a cell phone app where students can record the amount of hours of sleep that they're getting per night without feeling embarrassed or feeling like they're looking bad in front of the researcher, which will end up leading to false data collection later on. So if we had that anonymous type of way to log those things, participants may feel more comfortable letting us know the truth of how many hours of sleep they really get per night. And in terms of GPA, it might just be really smart to have go to the university's registrar and get their GPAs that way, just so we make sure we have the correct ones too. Okay, so in terms of implications, I referred you back to the triangle again, so think about that. In terms of the triangle, remember I told you that concentration, our ability to concentrate, and our diets had an effect on our GPAs and our hours of sleep. So as a university, we need to find better ways to help sustain concentration in the classroom. And that can come from having stretch breaks or essentially brain breaks. And what I mean by brain breaks is like during class time, if we have a full lecture for an hour and a half, maybe at the 45-minute mark, have a 5 to 10 minute break to where students can just kind of take a break, come back to class that much more rejuvenated, ready to learn. In addition, in terms of diets, I mentioned that diet had an influence on our GPAs and the amount of hours of sleep we get per night. So we could offer time management classes to where students can learn to better manage their time in order to find better ways to eat, and not just eat, but eat healthy, because that will influence us later on in life as well. And so having that time management class will allow students to know, okay, I'll have this regimented schedule to where I can balance my time better and establish more of a solid routine, so where I can make time to eat lunch, make time to eat dinner, make time to eat breakfast, so. And also we could post flyers around school during high stress times. So during midterms and during finals, reminding students to eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner, take a break, calm down, relax. You know, just simple reminders, but they go a long way. And it's important that we tackle this now because it's only going to affect us later on in life as we move on to our future careers in the job market, or if we progress on to graduate school, or even if we just participate in other activities outside of school. If we don't break these habits or fix them now, we're just going to continue them on and we're just going to never improve and never get any better, and it'll affect our GPAs and our hours of sleep and our health, all full circle later on in life. Okay, so the main take-home message is that getting enough sleep is really important to fuel our bodies and our minds. It's important for our mental health, our physical health, and our emotional health. And it does in fact improve our health overall because as you saw in the triangle, diet did have an effect on our GPAs and our hours of sleep, and it improves our concentration in class, which will affect our GPAs and our overall academic performance in school. So it's really crucial to make time for sleep, and really there's only positives to sleep because as you saw here, if you get more concentration, you're going to improve your GPA. If you improve your diet, you're going to improve your GPA, and everyone wants to improve their GPA, right? Yeah? Okay, so anyways, today I'm going to offer you actually the opportunity to take your first step in order to improving your sleep habits. And so what that entails is taking the sleep pledge. And the sleep pledge is really simple and really easy. You just take the sleep pledge into your internet browser. You'll select the first topic that comes up, which is by the National Sleep Foundation. And it'll take you to this page here. And all you have to do is put in your email, you click submit, and you've taken the pledge. And I promise you don't get like 40 million emails telling you you need to get sleep, you need to get sleep. Like, they never contact you. It's more so, it's a simple, they make it easy because they want you to take that initial first step in order to making a change. Because all of us making changes are difficult. And so what will happen is maybe you'll take this pledge and then tomorrow night you'll go to bed and you'll say, oh, I remember taking that pledge. Maybe tonight I'll try to get an extra hour of sleep, or tomorrow I'll try to get an extra hour of sleep. And overall, in the end, in the overall scheme of things, every day you might do that, and eventually you'll hit that 7 to 9 hour mark that you need to be at. And you'll eventually have made the change without even knowing it. So I would encourage you to take it, and possibly take it now, because probably when you go home you might not take it, and then, you know. So I would encourage you to take it. It's really easy, and it just is one step in the right direction. So thank you so much, and I hope you all enjoy my presentation. Thank you.
Questions for Jacqueline?
I had a question. So, as someone who's a licensed play reads and never sleep, I think sleep is overrated, but at the same time, I know it's important. You know, did you ask them about whether or not they were a morning person or a night person? Because I know our energies are different at different times of the day.
No, I didn't look at that, but that's interesting. Yeah, I think that would skew the results for sure.
My question is along the line of Carlos's, so I was wondering, like, what other secondary variables can help link these two primary variables, sleep and GPA, right? Like maybe style, or, you know, the type of person you are as well.
Yeah. Well, if I could do some more research, I think it would be interesting to look at majors and their regards into GPA and hours of sleep, because I feel like certain students in certain majors may have more. I don't know, I just know, like, because when I did more of my science classes, I had quizzes every week, as opposed to, you know, psychology classes where we have tests every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So it's just a different way of studying, and so I feel like that could definitely impact sleep, and so I just think that might be something I want to look into more. Yes.
Jacqueline, what have you done to improve your sleep? What things that you, because like you were saying, it is very hard. It's
It is,
We
yeah.
could say to you, oh, we should do all these different things, but sometimes it's hard. So what are some personal things that you have found are effective for you?
No, I agree. I think it's definitely hard for me because when I have exams, I'm like out of commission and I'm like, I need to just study and do what I need to do and forget about sleep. But yeah, I think when I know I have that downtime, when I know I'm not taking exams, I usually try to take advantage of that, and I'll say, okay, it's 9 o'clock. I need to go take a shower so I can be in bed really early. I just try to, set those time limits for myself, so I know in order to perform well when that time comes, I should just really try to set that time out. So I think more so it's establishing a schedule and organizing your time. I think that's what I've learned the most.
So what I'm hearing is more intentionality, saying that I
Yes.
have to, because I think a lot of us have to do that, because it's at the end of the semester, and we're in a big rush.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves, we're pushing it back a little bit later because it takes a little bit longer when we're doing all these things. So something we just have to say, look, this is the timeline for going to bed.
Yes.
And just do that. But you're right, it's very
No, it's
challenging.
very challenging, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sara Rodriguez, and my project was on social media's impact of the self-esteem of women. So, statistics show that social media in online forms has become an essential part of life for college students, and about 90% of college students use social media on a daily basis. That's 70% increase from the 12% who were using social media back in 2005. So about 82% of students use Facebook, and about 55% use Instagram. So a little bit about past research. Perhaps the mass media consumption that females are exposed to at an early age is one of the biggest factors that affects their self-esteem and body image over time. So for this study, there was 99 girls between the ages of 11 and 18, and they were assigned to two groups, which was the risk condition and the control condition. And for the risk condition, girls watched the video of females that had gone through plastic surgery. So the women in this video talked about how unhappy they were with their bodies before the plastic surgery because they did not feel satisfied. And then they talked about how happy they were once they had gone through plastic surgery because they felt more attractive. And for the control condition, the girls watched a video of only the risk of plastic surgery. So after watching the videos, girls had to take a survey that would measure their self-esteem and body image. And the results showed the girls from the risk condition, they were less satisfied with their body image, and most of them responded that they would consider getting plastic surgery in the future to change how they look. And for the control condition, most of the girls said that even though they were not completely satisfied with the way they look, they would not go through plastic surgery, although there was a few that still said that even after watching the risks of the plastic surgery, they would still want to get a plastic surgery later on in life. So this study shows that the vast consumption of mass media, has made girls believe their self-esteem, their self-worth comes from their own physical appearance. They have learned and they have internalized the ideals of society that it creates about beauty. So they believe that in order to be attractive, they have to look like the people, like the people they see on media. And a little bit more about past research. So media has a negative impact on the self-esteem of some people. In this study, there was 32 participants. They were all college students, and there was 60 males and 16 females. And they were also randomly assigned to one of the two groups, which was the experimental group and the control group. And for the experimental group, the participants have to watch the DVD with the models of French society's ideals of beauty, such as thin women and muscular men. And for the control condition, participants have to watch the DVD with the neutral images of cars, telephones, just random neutral stuff. And then after watching the videos, all participants received 4 surveys that would measure their body satisfaction, their self-esteem, their levels of internalization of ideals, and their levels of social comparison. So the results showed that for this study, men were less, they were more satisfied with their body image, and also that they internalized the ideals of society less than women did. For self-esteem and social comparison, the levels were similar for both men and women. So this study shows that the more media females and people are exposed to, the more effective they are in a negative way, and the more they internalize the ideals of them of what they watch in media without them even realizing that they're trying to change how they look to fit that look that they're watching on TV. So, question on hypothesis. For my question, it's what impact does social media have on female self-esteem and body image? And my hypothesis was very male female students who have a higher social media usage will be more likely to have a lower self-esteem and a negative body image than females who spend less time on social media sites. So, why is this important? So the younger females internalize social media ideals, the more dissatisfied they become with their bodies by their teenage years and their adult years. So more females become unhappy and obsessed with their body image, and they forget that their self-value does not come from the standards that social media has created about beauty. So some of the extreme choices that girls make at a young age to start changing their body image would be strict diets, like they start starving themselves, or they only eat about 1 meal a day to be skinny. And then there's extreme exercise routines. Some females might go to the gym every day, like 3 to 4 hours a day, or more than once a day. And then the most drastic one would be plastic surgery, which they decide to change something they don't like about their body completely in order to look more like the person they want to be. So for my results, I found so participants in my study, they were all Maryland University students, and they were all females, and they were between the ages of 18 to 25 years old. So the materials used for this study, it was the consent form given to all participants before taking the survey, then the survey itself, and then the debriefing script, which was given to all participants after they took the survey. So procedure. So in order to get participants for my research, I attended a research day. And I approached females. I asked them if they would like to be part of my study. Once they agreed, I gave them the consent form, which had a brief statement on what the study was about, and also information about Professor Draper in case they wanted to ask anything about the study or had any comments. And after that, I gave them the survey. After they took the survey, they all received the debriefing script, and I thanked them for being part of my study. So the results from my study shows that 2.7% of female students spend less than 1 hour a day on social media applications. About 48.6% spend 1 to 3 hours a day on social media applications. 32.4% spend 4 to 6 hours a day on social media applications. And 16.2% spend more than 6 hours on this social media. So it shows that most of the females at Marathon spend about 1 to 3 hours a day on social media applications. So before I give what they responded about body image and self-esteem. I just want to give a brief definition of how I define self-esteem and body image in my study. So self-esteem is how much you feel your worth and how much you feel other people value you. So this is important because feeling good about yourself can affect your mental health and the way you behave. A body image is how you view your physical self, including whether you feel you are attractive and whether you feel other people like the way you look. Although these two are not the same, they do influence each other because if you have a lower self-esteem, you're more likely to have a negative body image of yourself, and if you have a higher self-esteem, you're more likely to have a positive image of yourself. So what participants responded was that the effects that they think that social media has on them is that 2.7% thinks that social media has a positive effect on their body image. 32.4% thinks that it has a negative effect on their body image. 10.8% responded that it has neither, and 54.1% responded that it has both a positive and a negative effect on their body image. For self-esteem, participants responded that social media has, 2.7% of participants responded that social media has a positive effect on their self-esteem. 27% responded that it has a negative effect. 8.1% responded that it has neither, and 62.2% responded that it has both. So most of the participants think that social media has both a positive and a negative effect on their social media and their self-esteem and body image. So for my results, the hypothesis was not strongly supported. So females and married males are not affected by the images they see in social media. Their body image and self-esteem is not lowered by these images of attractive models and other attractive females they see on media. So I think one of the reasons why the results were, why it was not supported is because some of the participants were not consistent in their answers. So even though there were similar questions to each other, they responded very differently. So I feel like that might have affected the results of the study. Also, when I was looking at the surveys, I noticed that a lot of the participants changed their answers. So I feel like maybe they have been conflicted in the way they answered. They felt like the first answer they gave was not what's expected of them. They might be embarrassed to admit how they really feel, and they change their answer to something that is more like expected of them to answer. And so limitations to my study was that it was a small sample size of only 37 students. So this does not represent the whole female population of Maryland. And then some students did not answer all the questions of the survey, so I have to fill some out. For future research, I think that it would be interesting to do this study with both males and females to see if the results are the same. If males are equally affected by what they see on social media as females, or maybe they're more affected or less affected by this ideals of social media. Also, focusing on ethnicity, it would be interesting to see if maybe one group of people is more affected in a negative way by what they see on social media, another group might think that it has more of a positive effect on their self-esteem and body image. And also the class standing. It would be interesting to study freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors to see if maybe their class, the range, has something to do with how they are affected by social media. Maybe freshmen might be more affected by what they see in social media than seniors, or vice versa. So it is important to teach girls at a young age that their self-esteem and body image does not come from what they see on social media, so they should learn not to compare themselves to the models and the people they see on social media, because not everyone has the same body image. So everyone is different and unique in their own way, and they should learn to embrace that and not compare themselves and be happy with who they are. And it would be a good idea to teach young girls to help them with their self-esteem at a young age, so when they grow older, they don't feel like they have to look a certain way, and instead be happy with who they are and accept their flaws and just the way they are, and be happy with the places here.
Sarah, I find your research really fascinating because a generation ago, you weren't spending 4 hours on social media. There was no social media. I mean, a generation ago, right? We didn't have social media. So, you know, it brings up all kinds of questions about where you guys find the time to be on social media for 3 or 4 hours a night. And it's, your research is also supported by some other student research we're going to see this afternoon that came to a similar conclusion about the number of hours. I was really astonished by your research, maybe more than any that I've had this year. That was new to me. I thought maybe a couple hours, an hour and a half, but just so much time spent on social media. And I think you're onto something, that there is a consequence to it, but maybe we don't know exactly where it falls, that particular consequence. Do you have any idea of what it might be?
I feel like students want to be more in contact with each other, and in order to do that, it might be through social media to learn more about what other people are doing, to see what's the trend and things like that. To just be in constant contact with other people to see.
Yeah, it brings up the question of socializing versus being on social media
But not
and
in
the difference.
Do you think that they looked at texting friends as that, would that be considered social media, or was it purely Facebook, not Messenger, but just Facebook and Instagram? Do you know what were the parameters for social media that were being considered?
They were just looking at applications, such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube videos, but not texting. They focused on texting or messaging.
I thought you had some really good, those 2 research articles you referred to are current, and you know, there's so much, there was so little research because it's a new phenomenon, and so to find some really good research, I think your whole paper, your presentation flowed in a really good way, supported by some good research. I find it interesting that your results showed that students changed their mind. You know, that the conflict in the questions, why do you think that was?
Maybe I feel like they felt that the answers that was expected of them, maybe they were embarrassed to maybe admit how they really feel, like they're not okay with their bodies because of how social media influences them. And they wanted to fit more like, it's okay, I'm going to say that I'm okay with it, just for the purpose that I don't want people to know how I really feel.
Right.
At least makes me feel.
Interesting.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome.
I can ask after.